דייני לפניך מלך חי וקיים מוי דייני לפניך מלך חי וקיים דייני לפניך מלך חי וקיים מוי דייני לפניך מלך חי וקיים שחזרת בי נשמעסי בחמלה רבו ומנסך שחזרת בי נשמעסי נשמעסי בחמלה רבו ומנסך דייני לפניך מלך חי וקיים אוי דייני לפניך מלך חי וקיים אוי דייני לפניך מלך חי וקיים אוי דייני לפניך מלך חי וקיים שחזרת בי נשמעסי בחמלה רבו ומנסך
Recorded live at and broadcasting from the Evelyn Rubenstein Jewish Community Center of Houston, Texas. This is a Wednesday morning edition of JM in the AM. My name is Nachum Siegel, and we are here at the JCC in Houston after having taken an amazing and incredible, in many ways very sad, in many ways very hopeful, tour of this neighborhood, which was devastated 6 weeks ago, you'll recall, in what's being known as a Memorial Day storm, a Motzei Yontif storm that Monday night. 6 weeks ago last night, or I should say Monday night, is when it happened, and today we got to meet some of the people who have been going through some very difficult and trying situations since that night. We also visited some institutions that are going through their own trials and tribulations, and today we're here at the Jewish Community Center of Houston, Texas, where hopefully we'll be able to shed some light onto what's been happening down here and encourage people to think about our brethren here in Houston, Texas, to possibly support our brothers and sisters in Houston, Texas, and certainly to give some moral support to the community here in Houston, Texas. This is not the first time we've hit the road when it's been a storm-themed tragic episode. You recall 2.5 years ago, we were in Woodmere when we focused on a whole bunch of different neighborhoods and communities in our own area of New York and New Jersey that had been hit so hard by Superstorm Sandy. Many of the scenes for us are similar to that, but now we've traveled many, many miles to be here in Houston and to examine the situation and to show some solidarity. And there are a lot of people in this audience. I shouldn't say a lot. There's some people in this audience, a couple in particular, who were very anxious to see us hit the road, come to Houston, show support, and really continue this amazing mission of JM in the AM and the Nachum Siegel Network. I am joined today here in Houston, of course, by our engineer ZK, and a big thank you to Stan, who's in our studio. The two people who are joining me on the air to start this off, the general manager of the Nachum Siegel Network, Miriam L. Wallach. Nice to have you here.
Good morning.
And a big hello to our producer, who has done an exemplary job as usual, and we know that this show is going to sound great because of him, and that's Mark Zamek. Mark, good morning to you as well.
Good morning, Nachum.
So your first impressions of today's tour of the storm-ravaged area of Houston, Texas that we visited?
I think the only word that I could use was breathtaking for a lot of reasons. First is driving through the streets from the airport, and certainly during our tour of the community, couldn't tell there was really anything wrong. Certainly you see maybe more construction trucks than you would seem, maybe a little bit more debris outside. You really can't tell anything happened. Going into people's homes, and we're going to post some pictures, it really truly takes your breath away at the loss of so much in the Jewish community. And then to go see UOS, the big Orthodox shul in the neighborhood, a United Orthodox synagogue, and to see their entire main sanctuary completely gutted. And then on the flip side, it's sort of at the end of our trip to go see the conservative shul, which was really no words from the other side of it. I'd never seen a shul like at that level of height, of size and beauty, and it was really just amazing, the gamut of emotions. But breathtaking, I think, was the only word I could think
there's an
of.
incredible history in this community, that's for sure, and we'll speak to some of the people who could tell us more about it during this program. Miriam L. Wallach saw in her own backyard what happened during Superstorm Sandy. Thank God, as I think we have mentioned on the air, your family was relatively unscathed.
I
right?
cannot complain.
In the scheme of things.
Correct. I cannot complain.
But you saw a lot and showed me a lot of what had been going on in that neighborhood at that time 2.5 years ago. What were your impressions today?
So the word I would use is speechless, which is a word we don't like to use in our business because it's bad for business. But when I, as a person who never has a lack of anything to say, walk into a location and there are no words that come. First of all, it was a flashback to 2.5 years ago with Hurricane Sandy and walking into homes of my friends that it was the exact same scene, and the devastation and the look on the faces of the families as to we don't know what's next and who's going to tell us what's next. And there's that desperation and there's that loss. There's the bottles of Clorox and the baking soda and the smells, the wafting of the smells of mildew and everything, that the efforts that people are taking to start rebuilding their lives. We're not even at the rebuilding, we're still at the cleanup.
That's right.
Pictures filled with dust, things strewn all over the place, anything that somebody could potentially grab during the storm and put at a higher or more elevated place in order to rescue it. You see things are completely out of sorts, as if that location itself was hit. And to what Mark was saying before, yeah, you drive down the street, there are dumpsters, there's piles of garbage outside, there's sheetrock, there's debris of sheetrock, and then you look closer and realize you can see through these people's homes straight to the back because the homes are empty.
Oh yeah. The first notion I think that we and this audience had, the majority of this audience had, about what was going on down here was, as you mentioned, Mark, United Orthodox Synagogues, and the pictures we saw, and many of us know Rabbi Barry Gelman, one of the people in Houston that is very well known to the New York, New Jersey community. So those were our first impressions. Now, I will tell you that when I walked into the synagogue today, I didn't expect to see what I saw. In other words, I was, and I'm sure everybody around this country thinks, many people around the country think the same thing, that, there's a few weeks of cleanup, and sure enough, once all this cleanup is done, the shul, as an example, is relatively back to normal.
Right.
And this is a sanctuary that now they have to decide what the future brings, and are they going to rebuild or not, and are they going to move to a different location, and all these different questions. It's a much more severe situation than most of us think.
I think that people will hear, hopefully, during the show, there are a number of themes that are going to run through. One is there's still a lot of question in people's minds. Any of the families that we've met really don't know yet what their reimbursement on the insurance is going to be. There's a lot of unknown. There's a big fear that a lot of the community might move away. There's a big fear that a lot of community might not be able to afford to rebuild. The shul is in flux. And yet, we saw even today, and you'll hear through the balance of the show, a tremendous amount of hope.
Oh yeah,
for the future, and we're very
camaraderie,
Yes.
neighborliness,
and
outreach from other communities that have nothing to do, that one would think are very far from the Jewish community. Other people of other ethnic groups and religious groups that have come through with tremendous, really brotherhood. To help each other out both ways, by the way. Jewish community reaching out, other communities reaching out to within the Jewish community, really amazing. Let's introduce our first guest, and that's Joel Dinkin, who is the Executive Vice President of the JCC. I mentioned we're in the Evelyn Rubenstein Jewish Community Center of Houston, Texas, and that means they are our hosts. They felt it valuable enough when they heard we wanted to come down to Houston to host us here, to literally do the show, if you're watching the video, to literally do the show in our in their foyer, in their beautiful vestibule, in their lovely lobby. Let's put it that way. And the executive vice president of the JCC is Joel Dinkin. Joel, welcome to the Nahum Siegel Network.
Welcome. Thank you for coming to Houston. Thank you for being at the JCC.
I thank you for that, and it's great to be here. It does seem already, even though this team is only here for a relatively short number of hours, that this is a very important epicenter of the Jewish community. Could you describe to our listeners how vital this JCC is?
Yes, I can. So first, in regard to the recent devastation with the flood, the center has been the central address of activity. From day one, we were sort of the drop-off and pick-up of supplies and volunteers in coordination with Jewish Family Service, both in terms of boxes and packing supplies and clothing and food and etc. And we continue to be that. We've had a series of educational meetings and forums to provide opportunities for residents of the community who have been impacted by the flood to receive updated information. Like tonight, we expect 400 or 500 people.
Wow. Who
will be here to meet and listen to city officials, FEMA officials, representatives from SBA, insurance companies, banks, etc. In a couple weeks, we're having a big fair where companies and contractors, engineers, people who have had direct hands-on experience with renovating homes that have been damaged by flood to come in and provide people with one-on-one consultations. So that's sort of our role in the JCC in the last 6 weeks with the flood. We're also providing space for the other Jewish organizations who typically come here, but will continue to come here because of need.
Yeah, no question about it. And a typical day, if we weren't focused on flood activity, and if we weren't talking about FEMA, and if we weren't...
So we actually were somewhat concerned when I spoke with your producer about being here in our lobby, because As you can see, the lobby is sort of the epicenter of the center activities.
Very vibrant.
So we open up 5 o'clock. Our fitness facility opens up at 5 o'clock. It's summertime, so today we had probably close to 700 kids in day camp programs ages 2 to 14. We start camp at 7 o'clock in the morning and go through 6 o'clock at night. We have a large outdoor swimming pool. We have a large fitness facility. Tomorrow night, the Sofim, the Israeli Scout Caravan, is here performing. They're traveling the states and doing a show, and they're doing some programming. Tomorrow is Israel Day at JCC Day Camp. So lots of stuff going on here at the J.
You are at the J. That's how we refer to it. We're at the J, everybody.
J.
That's how they refer to the JCC down here in Houston. Joel Dinkin is with us, Executive Vice President of the JCC. What you just described is sort of the impression that we were getting all day long, and that is that in many ways the community, because not the entire community was not devastated, and not every section of the community or of each neighborhood was devastated by this storm. So in many ways, life continues as usual, as normal, like you just described all the different activities. By the same token, at the very same time, there are hundreds of families within the Jewish community and thousands, I would think, in the greater Houston community that are going through this time warp where they're still sitting, 6 weeks ago, and God knows how long that period of time is going to last for them. So it's sort of like a delicate balance going on in the community, right?
It is, and I think we continue to be concerned about that because life is going on, and it was actually we think it's somewhere between 450 and 500 families that have been impacted by the flood.
Right.
That's just a small component of the Jewish community. So that is a concern, and but life does go on. And so we also the community has been trying to provide ongoing support to those families to help them so that life does go on.
Right.
So, for example, it is summertime, it's camp. And so kids that may not have been enrolled in camp are now here enrolled at the JCC for free so that the families can find ways to put their life back in order. And it's been, we've watched the sort of the progression where it was basically a cleanup and then finding alternate housing. And now where people are now starting to make the kind of decisions they need to make on a day in, day out kind of basis about what to do and how to renovate their home and how to move forward, which is sort of what the program is about tonight,
right,
which is to help them in that along that next journey.
Was there any particular damage to the JCC?
So we actually we were very fortunate. We had some damage in our racquetball court area. We also have a separate facility that's one of our summer camp facilities, which is about a mile from here, that we had just finished renovating. We were going through the punch list and about to reopen the Friday of the flood, and had about a foot of water in there. And we turned around very quickly, and we've been holding camp in there, and it's kind of a makeshift kind of way. But we've been, as far as institutional damage, we were probably the most fortunate between our damage and the damage of the synagogue.
And what area of Houston do you live in?
I live in Bel Air.
Which is considered hard hit or not?
Hard hit. Bel Air was not hit at all.
Not hit at all?
It had no flooding. The flooding in this area was pretty much contained to the Meyerland community, in the Willow Meadows community, which is where UOS, United Orthodox Synagogue, is located.
And those two are the two big targets, so to speak,
targets,
for the storm that has no name.
Memorial Day flood.
Now it's the Memorial Day flood. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Or the post-Shavuot flood.
Right. We've been saying as Shavuot ends, all of a sudden the water began.
Yeah.
In fact, the next morning we had on the air a gentleman, Yoni Pollack, who survived the night with his family in one of those situations where he was lying on his kitchen counter most of the evening, and most of the night, I should say, and that's exactly how the yontif ended. It ended with the rain starting, people discovering it was coming into their home, and then the next morning.
And it was not expected.
Right.
I mean, typically when we've had flooding issues here, it's been a result of hurricanes, which have been weather predicted. This was a rainstorm that started Monday evening, and just pounded and pounded and pounded for hours. And it was the middle of the night where you hear stories about people who found in the middle of the night, they woke up and heard or felt the water or started receiving phone calls from neighbors and friends about what was going on. So this was not something that was expected, which probably made it also that much more difficult. And it was interesting. It was a couple of days until we really had a sense, Nachum, of the impact. And as you saw people, you'd say, "Hi, how are you? And are you okay? Is your house okay?" Now it's, "Hi, how are you? What are your plans?
And that's one of the great mysteries that really continues to, I don't want to say scare everybody, but it's a big question mark over the community, what people's plans will be, whether they're going to move on, whether they're going to stick around or not.
It is, and it's from where I sit, my concern has to do with the long-term impact on the community, and this is about the next generation of the community in this neighborhood. And this is a neighborhood that was evolved in the mid to late 50s, early 60s. The JCC was built here in 67. You can see all the infrastructure between the synagogues and temples and Jewish day schools in the area. So this has significant impact for the Jewish community long term in terms of the next generation being here.
Yeah, you mentioned a very important point, and again, in our audience, or at least our core audience, doesn't always appreciate this, especially when it comes to diverse Jewish communities. But when we say that the JCC is a real umbrella for activity, for Jewish activity in this community, you mean that, because it goes so far in so many different directions.
That's right. We have a reach that as a community center, we have a reach into the entire community,
right.
And we have the ability to serve programs and facilities to everybody.
And that is unique.
It is unique, but it's actually. I think you'll find that in many of the large metropolitan communities outside of New York,
right?
And that's what the role of the JCC is,
right? But it seems for some reason that this one is particularly good at it.
Thank you.
At least that's what they say by reputation.
Thank you very much.
All right, so the future here, you're over the small damage you had in this building. Thank God. Your programs continue. The summer looks great.
Summer looks great. Future here is great.
And everything looks good.
We're excited about it.
Joel, I greatly appreciate it. You're a wonderful host.
Appreciate it, and enjoy the night.
Thank you so much. Okay. Joel Dinkin is Executive Vice President of the JCC here in Houston, Texas. As we continue here at JM in the AM, a big thank you to Jamie Turkel. If you are watching on our video, if you are looking in on any of the photos that we're posting on social media, you'll see that we've brought along a brand new Nachum Segal Network tablecloth that graces the broadcast area. And that's all Jamie's doing, and I thank you very, very much. And again, thank you to Stan, who's in our studio on this Wednesday morning at JM in the AM. We continue here from Houston as we continue to explore what's been happening in this community. The devastation from the unnamed till now Memorial Day storm has been pretty extensive and something that has affected so many people, in the hundreds in the immediate Jewish community and certainly in the thousands in the greater Houston community. Ellen Cohen is a city councilwoman here in Houston and has taken the time to join us during this important broadcast. She heard that we're here from the New York, New Jersey area, traveling all the way down to Texas to show solidarity and explain to everybody what the community down here is going through. Councilwoman Cohen, thank you very much for joining us here at JM in the AM.
My pleasure indeed.
It is nice to have you here. How many years have you been serving on the Houston City Council?
Well, I'm finishing, we have 2-year terms, so I'm finishing the end of my second term. I'm running again in November.
Very good.
And, but before that I served 2 terms in the Texas legislature.
Well, good luck with your next campaign.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
How long have you been living in Houston?
My late husband and I moved here from Montreal in 1977.
Boy, that must be an interesting difference, Montreal and Houston, Texas.
It was, believe me.
People have never stopped making fun of that, huh? And this, is there a way to,
But wait a minute,
I'm sorry.
But via Cleveland. I grew up in Cleveland.
All right. So, is there a way to describe to this audience and to all of us what Houston collectively went through? We've been concentrating a lot on the Jewish community. We saw Jewish neighborhoods today and the damage and devastation. Tell us about the entire city collectively and what happened with this storm.
Well, what's really interesting is that we had close to 11 inches of rain in 3 hours. And where we're sitting now was the epicenter. And the fact of the matter is, District C, which is the one I represent, has a very large Jewish community. And the fact is that I would say the largest percentage of people that were affected right here in this area. So I can tell you about the larger city. Larger city had a big rainstorm.
Right.
Larger city.
And most people did not suffer a lot of damage.
And they got slowed up, right. And there was a little bit of flooding here, and there were underpasses that were flooded.
A couple of bad days.
Yeah. Right. I mean, one bad, it really just bad. But where we are now got totally I mean, completely and totally wiped.
How does the government of the city of Houston deal with this? I mean, this is something that obviously, to some degree, they could prepare for, because in this area you are sometimes expecting storms, but this really did come out of the blue.
That's it. I mean, we are prepared for. We've had hurricanes. This area has been hit with
Right.
hurricanes, so you can prepare for it. But you can prepare for wind, and you can prepare for some flooding. But again, you can't prepare for 11 inches in 3 hours.
Right.
So the city, has a system in place. It got to work right away in terms of the solid waste department picking up, every day just about what was, people were trying to take out of their houses. We have a floodplain program in terms of what we're trying to do to you saw our bayous.
Oh, yes.
People call them whatever they call. I forget what people up north call them, but like
Canals?
our streams or whatever. And we're widening right where we are now is part of a program that's to widen the bayous. And even with that, and I asked a number of people from the city, if we had the entire bayou program in place, which it may be in 2021, would that have had an effect on it? And they said, well, we had at least 3,000 people flooded. We probably would have had 1,500. So we still would have been hit.
Right. As much as you do, as much as you go ahead and build higher,
Yeah.
as much as you extend or rebuild the bayous, nonetheless, you can't always beat the water.
And what's going to happen now is if people, what we're telling everybody here is, first of all, individually they have to register with the floodplain management. And if they're in the floodplain and if there's more than 50% damage to their home, they're going to have to, if they rebuild, they're going to rebuild. They have to
scratch.
rebuild higher. Yeah, they just have to.
Yeah, and people have to.
And it's not the city, by the way. It's the
federal government.
FEMA,
Right.
exactly.
People have to be prepared for that, and they have to be prepared to make important decisions
Yeah,
once
yeah.
they're given that information. I was asked for the benefit of the audience, to explain the bayou. So essentially, it's a method to gather water and make sure it doesn't.
Yeah.
it doesn't flood anywhere.
It doesn't flood.
And whether you call it a canal or a
Yeah, you can call it anything you want.
Right.
It's a stream, a canal that is a tributary that flows through our city.
Right.
It's a series of bayous.
and it's essentially the one.
But there's no traffic on it.
Right.
It
It's literally there to move the water
yeah, exactly.
or collect the water.
Yeah.
Speaking with Houston City Councilwoman Ellen Cohen, who is here. So tonight's a very important night because people are going to be getting all this information. We are here because we felt the need to show Houston and the Jewish community specifically that there are people outside of Houston, Texas that are concerned, that are looking toward what's going on, are hoping for recovery, etc. Do you get that feeling? Does the leadership of Houston get that feeling from other cities in the United States? Are Washington and other cities, city leaderships, are they expressing sympathy and wondering 6 weeks later how you guys are doing?
You'd really have to ask the mayor that. I mean, I don't know what kind of help and response she's getting from others, but yes, there's a sense of from the larger community, from the country as well. We know what you're going through. We've gone through it, particularly central states, and
Right.
they've all gone through horrible things. The other part of that is, if you know any of the politics of Texas and our relationship with the federal government, it's probably not a kumbaya relationship exactly, and so
That's one way to describe it.
and so we have to work closely with our federally elected officials and urge them to support us and to get the money to us that we need to do the kind of rebuilding that we're doing.
Long-term effects on Houston, and I'm not just talking about the Jewish community, I'm talking about in general, because the majority of the city survived without much damage. Will the long-lasting effects be mild, so to speak, in the big picture?
I think the long-lasting effects in general will be mild, but if it's your home,
Of course.
and everything you've done to raise your kids there and your grandchildren there and all, and one night it's completely wiped away,
Yeah.
then I don't know how to answer that.
Like we saw
because
today, I'm sure you visited plenty of homes over the last few weeks. And
I have. I've driven the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
We've answered a lot of questions. It's just a very traumatic situation, and the fact that it really touched our community so much. And I guess maybe that's one of the things I do want to say. I mean, for example, there's a group of Mormons that literally, at the moment they heard what happened, came out and started to help the community, many of whom are members of the Jewish community. They helped the synagogues. They did, they really stepped forward, as did a lot of our Christian friends.
Yeah. One of the things we mentioned toward the beginning of this show just a little while ago is the number of stories we keep hearing of outreach from the Jewish community to others and outreach from religious communities that are not of the Jewish faith to the Jewish community. The stories are unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling this show is going to be filled with a lot of them as we get personal accounts from people that were helped, by individuals, by families out
There's
there.
no question about it. I'm amazed at what all of us can do for one another. You know, it takes
Brings
somebody
out the
shout.
best in people.
It does. It really does. It really does. I agree with you.
We always lament that it has to be during a tragedy, but from what I hear, in these parts, it's not always in a tragedy.
No, Houstonians are very giving, very philanthropic. We have the largest number of ethnic minorities in the country here in Houston, and so we do a good job of getting along.
I greatly appreciate you joining us here.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you very much, and best regards from everybody in the Northeast.
Thank you.
We are thinking of what's going on down here.
Shalom.
Shalom to you. City Councilwoman Ellen Cohen here in Houston, Texas. Tonight, we are pre-recording our Wednesday morning show on Tuesday evening. Tonight, FEMA government agencies are here in the JCC, and they are literally trying to give as much information as possible and help as many people as possible in the aftermath of the storm. Many, many families, it's in the hundreds of families in our community were affected. We can give you eyewitness accounts of what we saw earlier today. It is unbelievable devastation on each individual level. And everybody out there is reminded about about how lucky we are to have stable homes, stable houses, etc. When you see what's going on here, Alani Schooler is with us. Lonnie Schooler is an attorney here in Houston, Texas. He is, I am told, an expert on the history of the Jewish South. A pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Actually, I would say more the Jewish history in Houston.
Jewish history in Houston. Good enough. I'm going to give you the whole southern region. What do you think of that? Huh?
Okay.
You just pointed to yourself when I mentioned about devastation in homes. What kind of damage did you suffer from?
We had some infiltration of water, and it was aggravating because we had to replace carpet, but we were the luckiest on our block, which was about 4 blocks north of the bayou. Everybody else south of us heading toward the bayou was underwater, 3 or 4 feet of water. Several people have already sold their homes and aren't returning, so I've witnessed firsthand the devastation that has occurred.
And the effect that it's going to have on the community because, again, as you said, people will move away and not come back.
Right.
How would you put it? Are we sitting in a Jewish historical city? Are we sitting in a place right now, Houston, Texas, that has a rich Jewish history? How would you put it?
I would express that, yes. For a city this size, we've never had as large a Jewish community as you find in Las Vegas or Phoenix or Denver for some reason, but the Jews have been here since 1836. First recorded Jewish settler was in 1836, which was coinciding with the establishment of the city and Texas independence from Mexico. Right. So we've been here a long time.
So I'd have to assume that there were no other cities in Texas that had any Jewish presence at that time. Would that be accurate?
Actually, no. If you look at a map, the most logical entry point at the time in the 19th century was Galveston, which had the predominant population.
Right.
And it had a great flood in 1900, which moved it from first in the state in population to 12th in one decade.
Right, but when were the first Jews in Galveston?
The Jews came through Galveston. Actually, the Jews came from Spain and migrated up through what we call the Rio Grande Valley to Galveston.
Oh, so we're talking about the 1600s.
Yeah, 1500s, actually. Yeah. And getting there was easy if you were on a boat.
Right.
And so the coastal areas, Corpus Christi, Brownsville, and Galveston, were the first places where we really had any population. But this is pre-colonial Mexico. Spanish colonial.
And then the 1800s, as you mentioned, Texas becomes a state in the United States.
Right.
Houston incorporates as a city and immediately has a Jewish population.
Right.
What's it been like? It seems like, the way it was described to me, the last 50, 60 years have been the real growth of the Jewish community here. Would that be accurate?
There's been a big migration from other parts of the country, not unusual for what we call the Sun Belt,
Right.
the states Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California, because of the climate, I think, and also the economic vitality of Texas. It's attracted a lot of people from the Northeast and the Midwest, Jewish people included, to come to Houston.
Right. And from the Sun Belt, which cities gave you some of the of the future Houstonians? Atlanta, New Orleans?
No, not as much. New Orleans did after Hurricane Katrina,
Right.
actually, ironically. But really, the Sun Belt cities were the ones that benefited from the migration.
Right. And what was that like 10 years ago when members of communities like New Orleans, the Jewish, came here, and I assume many of the people had very little, because of
Had nothing.
had nothing practically. And
My law firm was involved in a project, one among many. Our office is situated across the street from what's called the Brown Convention Center, ironically the site of two former synagogues, and 15,000 people were housed there. Another 25,000 people were housed at the Astrodome, which then was vacant, still
Right.
is. And we were in a project to take down the names of all the people they had recorded as coming in.
that's 40,000 people.
Yeah, putting them on a database, because families had been separated and parents and grandparents didn't know where their children and grandchildren were. And by this establishment of the database, they were able to locate each other and reunite. In the case of the Jews from New Orleans who came here, we had two special fundraising events that I remember, where the Jewish Federation of Houston sponsored programs to benefit these people. Many of them were taken in by local Jews to live at their houses until the city was reopened and their houses could be renovated. And although I certainly don't want to belittle what people have just gone through here,
Right.
frankly, I don't think it was anything to compare with Katrina, which had the double whammy of the flooding and the high wind.
How did people in New Orleans know that Houston would be such an accepting community?
I'm not sure. It ended up being Houston and Atlanta.
Right.
I think Houston is only 350 miles. It's the closest big city, right on Interstate 10. It just made sense to come here. We aren't out of a flood zone in terms of the hurricanes
Right.
or the storms.
You'd
but-
think that might want to keep them away, but instead
Well,
they-
actually, in fact, we had a threatened hurricane here a month after Katrina, and it fizzled out. But it destroyed Beaumont and Port Arthur, which is 100 miles to the east.
Right. And Katrina itself had an effect on southeastern Texas. Am I right or wrong about that? Corpus Christi got hit by Katrina or not?
No,
it did not.
the dirty side of the storm came in Louisiana.
Right.
The winds came through eastern Texas, but then the storm that came the following month, Hurricane Rita, was really devastating to the area around the Texas-Louisiana border.
That was the one. Rita. Lonnie Schooler is here talking about the Jewish South, talking about Houston, Texas. When did the Orthodox community start to make a real presence in Houston?
It was the original community in Houston.
Was it an Orthodox
Yes.
community?
The Reform movement, as such, started in Germany in
Right.
the 1810s, 1820s, really had not made its way to America at that point until there was a big German migration in the late 1840s.
Right.
In Texas, Reform movement was unknown. And our first great synagogue, still standing today, is called Beth Israel. Temple Beth Israel was established in 1854. And there's a famous photograph of the synagogue on High Holidays, 1871, with a mechitza down the middle, meaning a dividing
Right.
line, where well-dressed, modern-dressed Jews are on one side, and Jews in black with beards and black caps are on the other side. And the synagogue realized they had a divide that they couldn't overcome, and the decision was made to become a Reform synagogue. So it was really the first great Reform synagogue in Texas, followed quickly by the synagogue in Galveston, B'nai Israel.
Right. And are there any legendary rabbinic names in American Jewish history that come from Houston?
Henry Cohen is a rabbi in Galveston from 1888 to 1952. He's the longest-serving rabbi in Texas Jewish history. He was responsible as the existing role model and leader of the Jewish community in the southeast part of Texas to coordinate with the Jews of New York in what became called the West of Hester Street project, to allow Jews to migrate from Europe and land somewhere other than New York. The New York Jews were very concerned in the early 20th century about overpopulation of immigrants stop me if you've heard this before, except with different groups,
Right.
and in particular the backlash against Jews. And so they came up with the idea of having boats come directly from Germany to Galveston, which had a port and a direct steamship line. And the Jews of New York undertook fundraising to make this possible, and Rabbi Cohen agreed to sponsor all the arrivals because at that time the immigration authorities required that somebody had to speak up for people coming off a boat.
And that-
he said, "I'm the guy."
That was his function.
And he made it possible for all these people to survive. That movement, the so-called Galveston Plan, lasted about 6 years, saved about 10,000 people, and was only stopped because World War I started and the shipping lanes in the Atlantic were blocked because of military reasons.
We're here in Houston, Texas, as we talk about the after effects 6 weeks now since the Memorial Day Shavuos storm. One of the iconic pictures of this most recent storm involved a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi, being
Rabbi Rudinsky.
Rabbi Rudinsky being taken by boat, I assume from his home,
Right.
to be saved. And that picture was, in many ways, symbolic for a lot of people of what was going on with the Jewish community down
Right.
here during that storm.
It just showed how badly the damage was in many areas, as you just heard from Councilwoman Cohen.
Right.
A lot of this part of the town was underwater, 4 and 5 feet of water.
And I'd have to assume that his house was one of them.
Yes.
Yeah, I would
and
guess.
he is about a mile and a half east of where we are at a synagogue, an Orthodox synagogue, of which he was the rabbi, that was devastated itself with 2 to 3 feet of water.
Yeah, which we saw today, and boy, oh boy, it's hard to believe what they went through and what they are now going to have to face in terms of the future.
Right.
Do you worry about the future of the Jewish community of Houston after all this, or with the historical perspective, you're not that concerned?
Well, we survived the Galveston hurricane of 1900. I interviewed somebody once who was 3 years old at the time of the hurricane, later the mayor of Galveston, and he described being on the 3rd floor of a 4-story house.
You remembered it.
And the water came up to the top of the 2nd floor. And Galveston survived, although it never was as prominent in Texas again.
Right.
Houston, I think, is more spread out, a lot more diverse. In that sense, I don't think a weather incident will destroy the Jewish community. However, it's had a significant impact on the Meyerland area, which has been the scene of a lot of Jewish residents since the 1950s.
Right. I thank you very much for joining us here today.
Sure, it's my pleasure. Thank you for doing the program.
Pleasure. Lonnie Schooler talking about Jewish Houston and talking about the aftermath of the storm back on Memorial Day 6 weeks ago. And I thank you very much.
I have my neighbor and another victim of the flood, unfortunately.
Linda Berger is here. That's who Lonnie's referring to. Linda is CEO of the Jewish Family Services, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here. Thank you very much for being here and for joining us here today.
Well, thank you. It's such an honor to have you here, and people from everywhere know who you are. So it's
you.
pretty neat to have you in Houston.
I appreciate that. This was, I'll tell you, there are people in our audience who were very concerned that there be an outpouring of love, that people should at least. Yeah, you'll tell us how people can support the cause down here, but not just financially. There should be a realization by the community down here that there are people around the country who care. So I'm glad we're able to represent that here today. And tell us about the damage that you yourself suffered that Lonnie just alluded to.
So we live across the street from him and had about just 9 or 10 inches of water in our home, but it's took over 2,500 square feet of the downstairs, and we were fortunate to have an upstairs to go to. We lost pretty much everything that we weren't able to take upstairs, and this flood just took us by surprise. We're used to these things happening, but there was just no indication it was going to
You thought it would
happen.
be rain, and you'd wake up the next morning, and there would be the aftermath of the
I
rainstorm.
actually had gone to bed, but the phone called at 11:30 to tell me that the alarm at Jewish Family Service had gone off, and because it was the rain, I said, "Oh, it's just the rain. Ignore it." I wasn't sending anybody out in that
Right.
rain. And then I saw my husband and my daughter were up watching the water, and they said, it's just about 6 feet from our door. I said, well, you're watching it. I'm going to go back to bed. And then as soon as I got in bed, I thought, that's a really dumb decision. So we went and started moving everything that we could, and it's just shocking. It's really shocking. There was a for sale sign down the street from us, and all you could see was the word sale on top of it. So it didn't leave. It didn't recede till after 10 in the morning, and I think that's one of the things that made it so unusual. Already, 2 of my neighbors have decided to move into assisted living, and we're very worried about the neighborhood.
Are you here your whole life in Houston?
No, I'm from El Paso.
El Paso, Texas. And how long are you living here?
36 years.
And how long have you been with Jewish Family Service?
I've been there 10 years, so this is one of many storms that we've weathered.
Yeah, you've seen this before, huh?
We've seen it before, but it hasn't happened to us.
Right.
Even when it was Hurricane Ike or when it was Katrina. Katrina didn't come to Houston, but 5,000 members of the Jewish community of New Orleans came.
Right.
So we were able to be, the helpers. It's a lot easier to be a helper than to ask for help.
Jewish Family Services had a big role in accepting and absorbing those thousands of people from New Orleans?
Yes, the Jewish community. We really help people get into homes of Jewish community members here or into apartments, and we continue to support them for quite a long time while they were still in Houston.
A history-altering storm that was 10 years
Absolutely.
ago, when you think about it, in terms of the Jewish communities of the South. What practical ways is Jewish Family Services helping now? I can only imagine how many different directions you're being pulled in to help people. What are some of the things you're doing?
So we're doing tremendous case management right now, just trying to find out what the immediate needs are and then, responding to that. So we're doing a little financial aid, trying not to give out too much right now because we don't know how much we'll have to give, and that scares me, but I just kind of operate under the assumption that the money will come as long as we do the work right. And so we have right now 475 active cases since the storm.
That was the estimate of 500.
We had 775 people fill out forms, and most of them we were able to help with just a little help right away. So the 475 I think are here for the long run.
Yeah, and many of them are going to be here tonight to meet with the federal government.
Yes, so a lot of I don't think it's misinformation, but people repeat it and then it doesn't sound the same, and it's kind of like one of those games of telephone or gossip.
Plus, people are still in shock.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult for them to deal with the whole thing.
It's limbo right now, limbo for everyone, because they can't move forward till they know what their own insurance will do if they have insurance. And by the way, with the elderly, they're least likely to have insurance because if you own your home, you don't have to have flood insurance.
Right.
So many people let that go, and so we're seeing tremendous increase in the elderly. The other thing that really worries me a lot is the trauma that people went through during the storm. And so we hear a lot of stories, a baby crib floating, a mom having to swim down the street from her home to safety with the baby on the back.
We met people like that today, right?
Elderly that woke up with their bed wet or some because of the storm and not knowing what to do. So a little girl who has nightmares every night because she dreams of the water coming up to her chin, and her mom who won't leave the house since the storm because she's afraid that it'll happen again and she won't be there. And so those are the kinds of things JFS excels at, and we understand trauma and we work really hard to ask people to come forward and talk about it now and not wait.
All right, you mentioned JFS can use money, can use help and donations. What's the easiest way for people in this audience or anywhere in this country and world to help out? How should they do it?
Well, we've been collaborating very closely with the Jewish Federation here in Houston, and so on their website, houstonjewish.org, the very first thing you see is flood relief, donate to flood relief, and that's the best way to do it. They're taking in on the money, and then they're letting us spend it where it's necessary.
All right, HoustonJewish.org.
Correct.
HoustonJewish.org. Those of you who have been wondering how you can help out. And again, you have to understand that there's been I mentioned this earlier, how, for instance, I visited one of the synagogues today, and I was under the impression that, 6 weeks later, things must be cleaned up, getting back to normal, and obviously it's just the opposite.
I assume you went to United Orthodox Synagogue, and actually even I, who had been, into many homes, just my heart sunk when I walked in there and saw the devastation, really. And I think what you'll see here is you drive up and down the streets, and there's these beautiful manicured lawns, and then there's just a shell of a home behind those doors, and it's going to take a long time. I think it's a 2-year recovery period to whatever the new normal is.
Yeah, I think victims of Sandy up in New York, I think that 1 year was a certain benchmark for them, and 2 years, which passed this October, I think that was a second important benchmark. And you're right, it's going to take a while, and hopefully people will be able to do it and do it with as little aggravation as possible. Linda Berger, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you
Chief
for being
Executive
here.
Officer, pleasure, at the Jewish Family Service here in Houston. If you want to contribute, if you want to be part of those from around the country who've already played a role in helping financially down here, believe you me, the money is going to be used for a noble cause because there's so many people in need. HoustonJewish.org has the flood donation information. HoustonJewish.org under the leadership of the Federation down here. Julie Sachs is here. Julie is somebody who we met earlier today. We were actually in her home. She was nice enough to open up her home and give us a tour of her home and to tell us the story of what happened on that Monday night. Julie Sachs, welcome to JM in the AM.
Thank you.
I hope it's not too difficult for you to do this again. I'm never sure what to assume when somebody's in your situation, whether it's better to talk about it, not better, whatever the case is. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
We go back to that Monday night 6 weeks ago, and essentially you thought it was a regular rainstorm, or what we would consider to be a regular rainstorm, right? Mm-hmm. And what happened?
It was not a regular rainstorm. Went to bed, and about 12 or 12:30 in the morning, we woke up to thunder and realized it was awfully close to the house already, and it had just risen so fast and gotten clogged up in our street somehow, and we tried to move things up off the ground and just couldn't do anything fast enough.
When you woke up, there was already water in the house?
No, when I woke up, turned out we had about 30, 40 minutes till water came in.
When it started coming in, so you're thinking...
thinking maybe a couple inches.
Right, how much could possibly... And you've been through one of those before, right?
Correct.
You've been through one of those 1 or 2 inch floods, or whatever we call it.
Yes.
But in this case, it was a lot more than that.
Yes. This one you keep moving things higher and higher up thinking they're going to be safe, and you just never imagine that it's going to keep getting higher.
Right, and you were actually lucky because your kids have a bunk bed in their room, right?
We had a bunk bed. We had a lot of neighbors that were camped out in their attic for 8 or 9 hours, and we were, to be honest, I didn't even think about that. I was glad that we had the bunk bed at the time, and
so people have to imagine that you and your family are basically sitting on the top of a bunk bed.
There were...
Not knowing how high this is going to go.
Right, just waiting for it to stop coming in so we could get down.
Right.
But, yeah, we were we would have gone up into the attic had we needed another place to go, and if we hadn't been in touch with our neighbor who invited us to come down to their house.
So you're in the middle, and it's funny because later when I toured a different home, they sort of thought it was a silly concept that one could even leave the home during that storm. But at some point, you, at the encouragement of your neighbors, decided we're going to go for it. And at that point, the water's pretty high.
It was...
I mean, you described
it was maybe not the smartest decision.
Oh, okay.
In hindsight, I mean, but at the moment, it was, do we stay in our house and watch the water keep rising and have our kids, and to be honest, ourselves be petrified? Or do we just get out? It wasn't raining. It wasn't lightning. We're in an area where there were walls where the water really was a retention pond, basically, our neighborhood, because of the surrounding gates and fences. So there wasn't a current that could have washed us outside of our neighborhood, technically. So we took the chance and we waited till it stopped lightning, and we just got out as fast as we could. They had a windowsill that the water had not. When we got out the windowsill, the water was right there, at the windowsill.
Right.
It didn't. I don't think it actually came in, but we didn't know that. At
Well,
the
you
time.
described the water being up to your neck at that point.
When
right?
I got outside, when I stood outside the windowsill, it was up to my neck.
That's a pretty scary feeling.
I panicked.
Yeah.
I've never.
Well, who wouldn't
yeah.
in that situation? How far was your neighbor's home? And of course, with a lot of water in between, take that into consideration. Was it across the street, or where was it?
It was about 6 houses down on my side. About 6 houses down, but then I had to cross the street as well.
Right. And I'm sure the people listening and wondering. So, where do you sleep the next night? Like, where do you go? what do you do when your home has suffered the type of damage that yours suffered?
We are very fortunate that my parents live here and live within a mile of our house. And there was no question. They just say, come, of course we slept wherever we could sleep. But that night of the storm, when we got to our neighbor's house, they had a second story. And there were actually 2 other families in the house with us at the time
already,
who also had sought refuge at their house. And so their upstairs turned into a big giant camping ground for whoever needed to sleep, because of course nobody had slept any. But all the kids were up there sleeping, and I don't think any of the grown-ups actually got any sleep, but
right. For
okay.
those who think that kids treat this type of thing as a great adventure, what would you say?
Maybe in a couple years they'll think that.
That they were pretty. It hit them very hard.
There were tears, and there were moments of just really fear. I mean, we were in my son's room, and he was sitting there watching from his bunk bed, watching all of his belongings just float away, and hearing the sounds of we were sitting on the bunk bed listening to pots and pans falling on the floor.
Right.
And you don't know what's falling, and you don't know what's going to be left and what's not going to be left. And
Julie Sachs is with us, JM in the AM Wednesday from Houston, Texas. Strange way to ask this question, but you would have preferred not to lose what? There must be 2 or 3 items among the hundreds and thousands of things that you did end up losing that you would put at the top of the list that, if I could have saved these 2 or 3 things, it would have been meaningful to you. What does that include?
My piano was one, although we think it may be restored, but we're not sure yet. But it's a piano I've had since I was 12 years old, so it's a big part of my life, and that's my profession, so it's sort of my first child.
Right.
I'd say I wish my photo albums had been higher up. Not many of my photo albums were dry. My wedding album was safe, and my kids' baby books, my husband somehow managed to put them up on a high shelf in the middle of it, like while he walked through the house moving things around, he thought to go get those.
So is it comforting to know that those are safe?
It's nice to know those are safe. I did have one small table that my great-grandmother had brought from Germany.
Wow.
And it was the only piece of furniture I had of hers. And there was just no way it could. I unscrewed the hardware from it and kept the piece of wood that had the name of the furniture maker on it just to keep it, but that made me pretty sad. And just all my kids, we had a lot of books. My kids loved to read, and we lost hundreds and hundreds of books of theirs, and that's what they don't understand. They're trying to figure out why we don't have those and stuff, Dan. It's just the daily stuff. It was less stuff of huge value, but just a lot of things we use on a daily basis. You
would agree with me that after 6 weeks, it's an unfair question to ask about your future, because there's so much that's just, you're juggling a lot at this point. And again, and one of the reasons I'm glad we're down here is because so many people think that, the recovery has really begun and progress is occurring. And you could vouch for the fact that you're mired in this mentality and in this physical world that is, still 6 weeks ago. And you don't know when that's going to end. Hopefully soon. Things will really start to accelerate and pick up. But to ask you about the future at this point, you just don't know at this point, right?
We don't know. The easy thing for us would be to say we're just going to sell our house as is, and some investor will buy it and rebuild. But we don't really want to do that because we love the neighborhood and we love the neighbors. And I'd say, we're past the emotional part. I'd say if you'd talked to me even like 2 weeks ago, I would have probably broken down right now. But right now we haven't ruled anything out, and we don't have all the information because we don't have insurance numbers yet, and we don't know what anything. We have basics of what it would cost to elevate the house, what it would cost to rebuild on a very basic level, but we don't know what we have to work with yet.
All right. And another thing that some of the New Yorkers can sympathize with because of what happened 2.5 years ago, you lost cars also, not just your home, right?
Yes.
That's, I mean, it may not
It's another expense.
it may not compare, but it's certainly another difficult situation to deal with.
It compares when you have 2 working parents
Right.
and kids that have activities to get to. We have to find something pretty
Right.
soon. Yeah.
I thank you so much for joining us, and continued good luck. And you can vouch for the fact that as we ask people to support the causes down here and the community down here, that it's certainly a worthwhile cause.
Extremely. And we would appreciate any help.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Julie.
Thank you.
And thanks for opening up your home earlier today. That is Julie Sachs. She and her family are utilizing these first 6 weeks to deal with the aftermath of the storm, and hopefully, please God, in the next few days and weeks, they'll start to really recover and get back on their feet. 7 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday from Houston, Texas, and this is America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listeners-sponsored WFMU East Orange, WMFU Mount Hope, Rockland County at 91.9 on the FM dial. Normally we broadcast live from the Sonia and Robert Gold studios in Jersey City, New Jersey. Around the world on the web, jmnam.org. Thanks to Stan in our studio, ZK, our chief engineer on the spot, Mark Zamek, our producer here on the spot. Miriam L. Wallach, of course, is here as well, and we continue to present a JM in the AM from Houston, Texas. A big thank you to those who felt it important enough to send us down and expand and extend our radio presence all the way to Houston. Before we introduce our next guest, I remind everybody there is a website, houstonjewish.org/HoustonFlood, houstonjewish.org/HoustonFlood. Give whatever you can. Give whatever you can to help the Federation and Jewish Family Services. Every aspect, every segment of the Jewish community down here is being assisted by them on a regular basis. And as we know, the community down here has been devastated, and everybody's encouraged to give whatever possible. HoustonJewish.org/HoustonFlood. I am assuming this is Rabbi Gidon Moskowitz. Am I right? Rabbi Moskowitz is the rabbi of the Meyerland Minyan, as it's known. Meyerland is the neighborhood, right? It's a section that we're in here in Houston, Texas.
Correct.
And Rabbi Moskowitz, I say welcome to JM in the AM.
Thank you very much.
Someone told me you actually listened to this show many years ago.
Many years ago, on my ride into high school on the van. So I used to go to a high school in Staten Island, and that's what we listened to each and every morning.
Unbelievable. Thank you very much. How many years are you in Houston?
We've been here for about 10 years.
Same synagogue for 10 years?
Same synagogue for 10 years.
So this is, have you been through this type of thing before or not?
We haven't. Thank God we have not.
With all the storms and the hurricanes, it never got you till now.
There's been flooding on streets, but not in homes.
This is the first time that you had that
first
type
time
of
it actually
experience.
entered into.
Did your home get hit?
No, thank God not.
You're a lucky man.
Baruch Hashem.
That's for sure. But your synagogue did.
Yes.
And I was told that today or this week was the first time that the synagogue looked somewhat back to normal. Is that?
It's been a process. It's been going on for the last, really since the flood. But more recently, we finally finished the painting. So the shul is basically 99% of the way there.
Was the synagogue ever inactive because of the storm?
Just the first few days when it was just complete mayhem. But even the first Shabbos already, we met. We didn't meet in the shul. We met in a room next to the side of the shul.
Right.
Called a loft. It's a room that we use for classes and special events. So we met there because there was a little bit less damage there.
Your annex.
Our annex. And
Shavuos ends, right? It's a 3-day yontif. Tough enough as it is, right?
Yeah.
Shavuos is, if I recall, Shabbos, Sunday, and Monday, right?
Correct.
Even in New York, where there was no storm, it was a rough yontif. Trust me.
Yeah.
So it's a 3-day yontif. When you leave shul Monday night, I'm assuming sometime between 9 and 9:30. Would that be right?
Correct.
Okay. You leave. Is it raining yet?
It's not raining.
It's not even raining at 9:30.
Beautiful weather. I'm completely exhausted.
I can imagine.
Yeah. I go home, I go to sleep, and then my wife wakes me up in the middle of the night, and she says, the bayou's overflowing. She's reading it on, so she's getting some sort of alarm or text. And then we start hearing, people posting different things, emailing different things that water's coming into their homes, and that's when we knew something was going on.
Is there anything, now again, reminder, you said there was no damage to your home, thank God. Is there anything you can do that night for anybody, or essentially you're trapped?
Well, we didn't really realize the extent of the devastation until the morning.
Tuesday morning.
So, we thought it was isolated things here and there. Somebody's house was getting a little bit of water. I try and go to shul Tuesday morning. I couldn't get off my block. I tried to drive to the corner.
Too much water.
Too much water at each corner. I had to park my car and start walking, but then I couldn't walk because at a certain point, it was a lake.
So you assume not too many people made it to shul that morning.
Yeah.
Okay. And what happens the rest of Tuesday?
So at that point, we did hear about some families that were stranded. There was, again, mayhem. So we're trying to get boats, perhaps, to go in and get them out. Literally, there was one family that called us and told us that they're on their beds in their bedroom, and the water is up to the mattresses, and they're sitting there with their 2 little kids. So I'm calling around trying to get a boat. I finally did get a boat. By the time I got to them, thank God the water had receded.
Right.
He was already walking around his house.
Right. That was the middle of Tuesday. It started to go down, right?
That was already Tuesday late morning.
Right. That's when the...
And then I went to the shul to see what happened at the shul. By the time I got to the shul, also the water had receded to a great degree. But it was clear from the water line that there was at least a foot of water in the shul. And unfortunately, since we've never had this experience before, people, weren't prepared for it. So there were tefillin in a rack, like at the bottom of a talis rack at the bottom, all destroyed. And Sfarim, many Sfarim, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Machzorim, all destroyed because we store them, under the Aron. We store them at the bottom of cabinets.
Like every shul does.
Right. And the flooring was destroyed and the wall. So it was extensive damage.
So what was the key over the last 6 weeks to get the shul back into shape?
What was the key?
Yeah. Did you have volunteers? Did you have a big fund that came through for you? Like, what happened that you were able to do this in what I would consider to be a relatively quick amount of time?
It was very quick. Baruch Hashem, first of all, we had wonderful volunteers from the whole community, people who came in from outside of the community. There were yeshiva bachrim who came down from various yeshivas.
From outside of Houston?
Outside of Houston, from Teaneck and from YU and from Columbus, Ohio, NCSY kids. Really, really very special.
Call like a vote to them.
And Baruch Hashem, between the volunteers locally and also outside the city who helped us both in the shul as well as the families who were affected as well, we were able to turn it around quickly. We also have some people in the shul who are involved in construction, so they use their crews to help get the shul back up and running.
That's very helpful.
Baruch Hashem, it has been very, very quick.
How many families do you have in the shul?
We have about 65.
And is it a growing shul? How would you describe it?
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. It's a kiruv shul. So people come, they grow, and the shul itself, grows as well. And eventually many of them do move on. They move on to Eretz Yisrael, they move on to other larger cities or other communities where they can continue to grow or where their work brings them or their family brings them.
Outside of being recruited, I guess, at some point, what attracted you to Houston, Texas?
My wife and I, when we came down, we were really blown away by the community. It's an extremely warm community. It's extremely friendly. The Maryland Minion in particular is an extremely warm and friendly shul, and it's something I hear time and time again from people who come in. They say, you don't know how special a shul you have here. So we did see it. We saw it right away when we came, and it was love at first sight. We love the community, we love Houston, and it's been 10 years.
Communities need cooperation, and sometimes that cooperation is at different levels. It seems that there is a legitimate, genuine desire to cooperate one with another. I'm sure there's things that always come up, but it seems from what we've been told down here that there's just a genuine desire. Everybody, whether it's Orthodoxy, people across the entire spectrum, even communities that are outside the Jewish community, there seems to be a desire to just reach out and be a proper mensch to everybody.
Between the various segments of the Jewish community?
Sure.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm not sure if that's unique to Houston as much as it is perhaps to out of town.
Right.
Where it's a smaller community and everyone kind of...
I don't know. They say there's an extra special friendliness down here. That's what I keep hearing.
It is the South. And it is Houston. So,
well, very nice. I'll tell you. Thank God you've been able to get back on your feet as a synagogue. Thank God. That is wonderful. And I'm sure you have members of your congregation who are still facing this terrible challenge of rebuilding.
About 8 or 10 families, depending on how you count them, are homeless. Are literally homeless. So it's
either with neighbors or with family or out of town at this point.
Some of them have taken short-term rentals. Some of them are hopping around from friend to friend, and some of them, their families have been split up, where the wife and the children have gone to the family in the Northeast, while the husband stays behind to deal with the aftermath.
What's the lesson, big picture of Moskowitz? What's the big takeaway? What's the sermon once you survive 6 weeks of trying to get your shul back to normal? What's the big what's the word that we should keep in mind? Those of us who are lucky enough to be in homes that are not flooded and go to shuls that were not devastated.
The lesson I couldn't tell you. I'm certainly not a Navi. But one of the lessons I shared with my tzibur, with my community, is it's actually very apropos. We just finished Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. We just finished the 17th of Tammuz, the fast. And one of the things that the fast commemorates is the breaking of the first tablets, the breaking of the luchos. And there's an interesting medrash. The medrash says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the Holy One, blessed be He, comes to Moshe, comes to Moses, and he says to him, don't grieve over the breaking of the first tablets, because you're going to get a second tablets. And in the second tablets, it's going to be even better. It's going to have midrashim, it's going to have agadas, it's going to have halachas that the first tablets didn't have. The first tablets just had the Aseret Dibros. They only had the 10 Commandments. Obviously, the lesson there is very deep. But on the simplest level, we can take away from that perhaps the idea that when you go through adversity and you go through challenge and you come out the other end, you come out stronger, and there's something you're going to gain from it. There's something you're going to grow from it. So I like to believe that this wasn't just an annoyance or a tragedy to an extreme, but rather it was something that we can grow from, and that we will grow from. I really truly believe this shul will come out stronger.
Yeah, the community in general as well. Perseverance.
Yeah.
There's definitely a Jewish angle to perseverance, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you something else. I'll tell you the other angle, which we touched on earlier, is the idea of Mikam Chesro.
Right.
The fact that
people coming from New York to clean up your shul.
Amazing.
That's unbelievable.
Then, from all over the country.
Yeah.
And donations as well. We set up a donation on our website, on MarylandMinion.org. And donations have been coming in from Eretz Yisrael. They've been coming in from Chicago, from New York, from California. Really an incredible thing. Donations coming from organizations, the Aguda, the Orthodox Union, Lakewood Yeshiva, and even also non-Jewish organizations who sent us in very, very nice grants. And really very, very touching. I'll share with you one story, if I may.
Sure.
So I'm going through the mail yesterday, just looking at, again, I've gotten used to this idea that donations come from the strangest of places. And the particular donation I was looking at was very interesting. I opened it up, and it says on the envelope, it says United States Department of Justice. So I said, at first I thought we were in trouble.
I can imagine.
Then I open it up, and I see it's a check. So I'm thinking, what? The government doesn't send you checks for nothing, right? So I look at the check, and then it says underneath, from the Bureau of Federal Prisons. And then I understood that here's somebody who's sitting in prison, in federal prison.
And wants to help the shul.
And he wants to help the shul. He read something online. He probably doesn't have access to online, but he read something in some newspaper that he has access to, and he wants to help the shul. I was blown away. And then I read down, and it actually listed the name of the individual who sent us the check. Do you want to know who sent us this check?
Jonathan Pollard.
Jonathan Pollard. How'd you know?
I've heard this story from so many different causes. He's unbelievable. He always sends something to people, to Jews he thinks that are in need, which is an unbelievable.
It's beautiful.
Just think about what he's going through and what he does.
That he's thinking about us.
It's unbelievable. And you tell this story. The only reason I was hesitant to say his name and guess his name is I know the health challenges he's going through. I figured, how could he possibly be keeping this up of helping people in need? And look what happened. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Mikam Chesro.
Mikam Chesro is right. Rabbi Gidon Moskowitz, Meyerland Minyan. People should look it up online, and when they visit Houston, you're more than happy to welcome them.
Absolutely. Please do. Please come
Southern
on.
hospitality.
That's right.
A great Southern cholent, I'm sure. Thank you, Rabbi.
Shabbos. Thank you.
Every Shabbos. Thank you very much. We're here at JM in the AM, all the way from the New York, New Jersey area. We are down in Houston, Texas. Is this who I think it is? First of all, is it Lakey or Likey?
Lakey.
Lakey, okay. I don't want to mispronounce your name. We're all the way here in Houston, and Lakey is the lady. First of all, a big hello to Lakey's mom, Shoshana Minkowitz. You related to Shalom?
Yes.
How you related to Shalom?
Shalom's my oldest brother.
Shalom's your brother?
Yeah.
Holy cow. Boy, oh boy. I'm trying to think what I need. What do I need? Some hard salami? What do I need? Because your brother's still involved in the beef business,
yeah,
right?
Sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, anyway. So we found out that this is Shalom Minkowitz's sister. More importantly, she's the daughter of Shoshana Minkowitz, who's a regular listener of our show.
Regular listener.
Baruch Hashem. Lakey, how long are you in Houston?
We live here 17 years.
And why'd you come down here to begin with?
My husband got a job for the company Albertsons.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
the supermarket chain.
Right. They're not here anymore in Houston, but that's what brought us down.
And your name is Lakey Donan, I was asked to mention, so people realize who you are. And what's your function here at the JCC?
I own the cafe. I'm the in-house caterer.
How long have you been doing this?
It's going to be 2 years in November.
I hear it's a delicious menu.
Thank you.
I hear people enjoy this day and night. To what time are you open, by the way?
7 p.m.
So anybody who's visiting Houston, they know they have time for a good meal if they get here before 7 o'clock.
That's right.
Every single day.
Every day, Monday through Thursday, Friday till 2.
Very nice. All right, so check it out. It's called Lakey's Gourmet. Lakey Donan is the proprietor, and she's right here at the JCC. You must have an unbelievable perspective, because we're here just a few hours, and we see how many hundreds, I think we could safely say thousands of people come through this JCC just in a day like today. You must see Jews from all walks of life all day long.
That's right.
It's really remarkable.
From all walks of life. We love it here. We love being here. We like the fact that we're so well liked. The food is good. We represent the Frum community here in Houston, here at the JCC.
Right.
And it's
meaning
really nice.
that everybody could eat here.
Everybody
it's a
could
nice
eat
kosher
here.
facility.
Yeah.
No matter what, everybody can
That's
eat
right. And the people who are here, whether they're kosher or not kosher at home, they love the fact that it's kosher because it still tastes good.
Sure.
That's right.
Well, you're doing a very good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I thank you very much for joining us and for welcoming us and for your hospitality.
Thank
we
you.
look forward to visiting Houston, and we're not talking about devastation and storms.
Yep.
And anybody who comes down, check out. Right when you walk into the JCC, you'll find it.
Thank you.
Right when you walk in. Thank you very much, Lakey. That's Lakey Donan, Lakey's Gourmet in Houston. That's right. You didn't think there was great kosher food in Houston. We found it right in the center of the JCC. Quarter after the hour. It's JM and the AM as we continue. Miriam Al-Wallach is here. Social media sites that people can follow our photos and all that other stuff on Facebook, Nachum Segal Network.
Correct.
Instagram, Nachum Segal. On Twitter, at Nachum Segal Net. And you're guaranteeing that there are some nice photos that people could see.
Jamie's busy.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
But not just with our guests. You also have photos of what we saw earlier today, right?
Correct. And Jamie's actually going to be posting in real time during the show the pictures that accompany your different guests. But more than that, during the day, throughout the day tomorrow, she'll be posting a number of pictures of what we saw as we toured Houston, along with the website for people to give, which is HoustonJewish.org/Houston Flood.
You know, you never know what direction this show is going to take. Even though I'm doing it a long time, nobody ever knows.
Even though Mark's producing.
Do you get what I'm saying when I tell you that when I was walking into Rabbi Gelman Shul, UOS, I thought it was going to be a scene where they were basically recovering.
I was
where the
stunned.
main sanctuary, which we saw in those original photos, was going to be like,
right
on the right track to recovery, and it's just the exact opposite.
You and I saw your face, and it was basically the way I was feeling. Just like our eyes were rolling on the floor. You couldn't believe what you were seeing. It's completely devastated, and this is we've already cleaned up the mess.
Right, and they don't even know if they're going to remain in that building.
Right.
And they have so many other things to think about.
But they also talked about how the help that they have received from so many different people in so many different ways. The city of Houston was getting rid of racks, and so they were able to
library racks.
Right, library racks. So they were able to put their svarim that were donated from another community
in Sacramento.
Right,
a Sacramento congregation donated hundreds of chumashim to the Orthodox shul in Houston.
And we have a picture of those racks that you'll see you'll see today at some point or another. But just talking to the residents here and their upbeat personality. I mean, we went to the home. She'll be on a little bit later, Holly.
Right.
And her biggest concern was rebuilding her house so she could have more guests.
Right.
And that she kept on saying, I need to be able to have people over. And I'm saying to myself,
you have other things to worry
right.
about.
You have no downstairs of your house. There's a sink on your dining room table. And
that's 100% true, by the way.
Right. And I have pictures of that.
There's sinks everywhere.
There are sinks everywhere. And there are no bottoms of any of your walls. But you're concerned with providing other people meals. Just the outpouring. I mean, that's where her focus is.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really quite remarkable.
Information again are to support the general fund that's been set up, HoustonJewish.org/Houston Flood. And I thank those who made sure that we should be in Houston, Texas.
Absolutely.
So many comparisons for us to what we did, and we did it at the right time. after Superstorm Sandy. We waited the right number. I think it was also about 6 weeks.
I think it was a little less, but I could be wrong. Yeah.
But we waited the right number of weeks before we actually hit the road and started describing for people what had happened. In this case, the same thing, that we are here now 6 weeks in, a little bit more, and we're able to convey to everybody that, boy, this situation for so many people is not anywhere close to normal yet, as much as we think that it might be. Well, Lee Wunsch is the CEO of the Federation here in Houston, and without a doubt gets the Hero of the Day award from us, because he has been our host here in Houston for the entire day and led the tour to homes, synagogues, devastated areas, showed us a tremendous amount, appreciated the fact and continues to appreciate the fact that we're here from the New York, New Jersey area, expressing concern and wanting to help raise a little bit of money and raise awareness. Lee, welcome to JM and the AM.
Thank you, and thank you for coming to Houston.
A pleasure. How long have you been in Houston, Texas?
I've been in Houston, Texas since 1978.
Wow. That's quite a stretch of time. How many
few years.
How many storms have you been through?
Let's not talk about how many storms.
It's been a lot, though, right?
Too many.
More than you can count on one hand.
Too many.
And this one, it is taking on again one of the themes of this show. A lot of people don't realize it was completely unexpected as a damaging storm. This was not a quote-unquote tropical storm with a name. It was not hurricane season, which starts June 1st. This came out of nowhere to a degree. A lot of people went to sleep that Monday night, not realizing the type of damage they'd be having all through the night and the next morning.
We're used to hurricane season. It started June 1st. The storm was a week before. Hurricane season, we know a storm is coming. We have a lot of opportunities to get ready, to
data.
Prepare,
right.
Weather forecasts,
right.
etc. This storm was coming like a regular rainstorm, and it rains a lot in Houston. We're a tropical climate, particularly during the summer. What we didn't expect was the deluge of rain in a very short time that disproportionately affected the neighborhoods where half of our Jewish community lives.
How long have you been the CEO of the Federation down here in Houston?
I've been the head of the Federation for 16 years, been with the Federation 28 years.
So let's just take your leadership position of the last 16 years.
Right.
I'm sure you've had many challenges, and I'm sure you've had a lot of work to be done in many different areas, some of which was unexpected. This has got to be an episode that threw you and Jewish leadership down here a little bit for a loop. It had to have been a devastating blow.
It has, because we honestly had no idea what was happening. At the moment it was happening. Again, when there's a hurricane or a tropical storm, we've planned. You can't plan for every storm because every storm is different. But in this case, it simply started raining. And before we knew it, the neighborhoods were flooded. And the first day after the rain, the city was shut down. We couldn't even move. So some of us were trying to work from home, but it wasn't until the Wednesday after the storm that it began to reveal itself as to what had happened.
Right. Is it safe to say, because of the magnitude of the Federation, because of the, as we've described it, the incredible ability you have down here to really be a fantastic resource for all of the diverse Jewish community? I mean, you are, we're sitting here in the JCC, you with the Federation next door. It's not an understatement to say that you are the umbrella of the entire Jewish community, that every segment of the community depends on you. With that responsibility on you, did you wonder if you'd be able to supply and effectively handle what people needed to be handled in the aftermath of the storm? It must have been a scary situation for you.
It was a scary situation, but because we've had some experience dealing with these storms, we had somewhat of a game plan. And again, every storm is different, but I'm always impressed and inspired by the fact that people, our professional leadership, our volunteers, they step up to the plate. When families are in crisis, as they definitely were and continue to be, we step up and respond.
You didn't know, at least I would assume you didn't know, if the financial support necessary to help the people would come through.
You're absolutely
you had
right.
no idea. You had no idea how people would respond. Yet, Jewish communities, both as individuals and as organizations throughout the entire country, helped out in the last 6 weeks.
We've received a lot of support from communities around the country, quite frankly, from including some communities in Israel.
Right.
But I'd be less than honest if I didn't tell you that the magnitude of the cost is such that we need more help. And of course, the reason I'm delighted you're here is because it's disappeared from the media,
Right.
both nationally and locally. And so part of our job is to keep this uppermost in people's minds, that this is a long-term recovery process that will be the costliest natural disaster to ever affect Houston's Jewish community.
And as we've said, the community down here has been through others, but this will be the costliest. We'll give out the web address in a minute. This is something you explained to us earlier today. There are so many people in Houston, thank God, both Jewish and non-Jewish, who had no damage. There are so many people in this city of, so many thousands that were able to go to work a couple of days later and get back to normal. And that's what you mean when you say that there's just, even locally this has been out of the media. We would suspect, the Houston newspapers are probably covering this on a daily basis. In many cases, they're not.
They're not.
Because it's just out of the picture. And we have hundreds. You've estimated 500. Someone earlier said 480. Of families just within the Jewish community here who are in dire need, in terrible situations. You gave us a tour earlier of a couple of different homes. The downstairs, we're talking about the main floors, the dining rooms, the living rooms, in many cases bedrooms, the kitchens, completely devastated, gone forever. And decisions are going to have to be made to rebuild, how to rebuild, maybe knock down the entire home and rebuild it from scratch. There are people who are in a very tough situation right now.
So they fall into two categories. We're concerned as a community with the short, mid-term recovery of these families that are facing extraordinary financial exposure. They want to rebuild their homes to whatever degree, but you saw two homes today, and multiply it times hundreds.
Right.
Similar situation.
Same scene, and you've seen plenty. You can attest to the fact that it's the same scene in each one.
50 or 60 homes over the last 6 weeks. And the bigger challenge for the community is that this has been a very stable Jewish community for many, many years. It's a good Jewish community. Not the size of Jewish communities in the tri-state area.
No, we're not talking about size. We're talking about quality.
Quality Jewish community where everybody gets along. A beautiful community. But if families make decisions that they don't want to subject themselves to additional flooding,
right,
then they could make decisions to either leave the neighborhoods where we've invested billions in our Jewish community institutions over the last 60 years, or even worse, leave the city. And that would devastate our Jewish community.
Right.
Devastate.
And you mentioned that when it comes to the Orthodox community, there's an added component where, because of Shabbos, walking, etc., proximity to shuls, it's a tighter community. Could you imagine if, God forbid, a percentage of that group would pick up and leave? Obviously would have a tremendous effect.
Just 2 years or 3 years after the OU said Houston is one of the most desirable Jewish communities for young Orthodox families to come and live a rich Jewish life, we could literally see the exodus of those same families from the community, from the city.
Today's not the day for the tour for those prospective people who want to move in, but hopefully in a few months.
I only take friends on the tours. I don't take strangers on the tours.
Hopefully in a few months there'll be a great tour again. We'll be able to show people how incredible this community is. Lee Wunsch is with us. He's CEO of the Federation here in Houston, Texas. When it's not a discussion about devastation, when it's not a discussion about the supporting HoustonJewish.org/Houston Flood. That's HoustonJewish.org/Houston Flood. Your days are spent doing what? When we're not talking about homes being devastated and synagogues that have to rebuild.
We're focused on building a vibrant Jewish community here and helping our Jewish communities around the globe.
And people would be amazed at the events, at the outreach, at the programs, at the summer camps, at what goes on in this building, what goes on in your building. They'd be amazed at just how much of a vibrant Jewish presence there is here.
Right. When my parents moved to Texas in 1951, their family, my family in the New York area said, "Where the heck are you going?" And in 1951, of course, it was not much of a Jewish community in the various cities in Texas. Today we have a vibrant, active, dynamic Jewish community and lots of activities. and you can lead a very nice Jewish life in Houston.
No
so the
question.
Federation's involved with all of the things that go on in our community and indeed around the world.
Yeah, no question about it. And the enormity is just incredible. I mean, we spoke about it during the early part of this program. One of our guests was telling us just, the CEO of this building,
right,
of the Jewish Federation, of the Jewish Community Center, of the J, as it's called, and just going through some of the things that happen on a typical summer day. And it's really, people would find it amazing. I'm sure they do as they listen in. Again, we're in a crisis situation in Houston, Texas. 6 weeks later, while the bulk of the world thinks that this problem is over and that synagogues are able to get back on their feet and that families are able to just move on and are already in the process of rebuilding, that's 100% false. It's just not true. We are still in a crisis situation. Anybody out there who wants to help, HoustonJewish.org/HoustonFlood. You have many approbations from around the world of people who recognize the great work that's being done here and how you're allocating the money very carefully through very credible resources. So people should take that to heart and give whatever they can. HoustonJewish.org/HoustonFlood. Lee, thank you so much for everything today.
Thank you for being here.
And we appreciate you having us. It's great to be here. Rabbi Goldwasser, who's with us 7:30 every weekday morning, actually every Sunday through Thursday morning, more accurately, has prepared a special message, a special Torah message regarding our journey to Houston. He has prepared special words regarding what's going on here today that we picked up at the encouragement of some very wonderful listeners, and decided to come down and focus on what's happening down here in Houston. Rabbi Goldwasser's words, Zecher Nishmas of Zev and Yosef Halevi. Here is Rabbi David Goldwasser with Morning Chizuk.
Today we pay tribute to the communities in Texas, in particular the Houston community, America's fourth largest city and home to 40,000 Jews. We realize the tremendous devastation wrought by the floods and the ensuing damage. Numerous residents had to be evacuated, including the respected Rabbi Emeritus, Rabbi Radinsky. Synagogues suffered damage. The JCC had 2 of its properties flooded, including its center. Shuls and main sanctuaries, social halls, school wings, administrative offices. Miraculously, the Torahs were saved. The heroic acts of volunteers from the Jewish community, along with many others, went from house to house with canoes and rafts to rescue elderly residents. Synagogues banded together in an unprecedented show of achdus and unity to help each other out, to provide space, and to be of service to each other's members. What an unbelievable time, a time of devastation, a time of hope, a time of destruction, yet a time of rebuilding. The very distinguished rabbinate of Houston provided great leadership, guidance, and help for the many who found themselves without homes, cars, without anything. We saw the greatness of the Jewish community that came together with an indomitable faith, a spirit to forge ahead and rebuild the very vibrant Jewish community, a citadel of Jewish life. There were Sifrei Torah that were saved. However, the Tefillin, Sidurim, Machzorim, and Svarim, holy books, were destroyed. We read in Vayikra, Eish Tomid Tukar al Mizbeach, Lo Sichpeh. A permanent fire shall remain aflame on the Mizbeach, the altar. It shall not be extinguished. There were 10 miracles performed for our ancestors in the Holy Temple in the Beis HaMikdash. One of those were that the rains did not extinguish the fire of the altar. The great Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin asked the question, we know that Hashem can do anything at all. Hashem could have ensured that no rain would fall on the Mizbeach at all. Then, each time that rain fell, there would be no need for a special miracle, that the fire of the altar should not be extinguished. Reb Chaim answered, this is intended to teach us the proper way that a person has to conduct himself in this world. No matter what happens, no matter the climate or conditions, no matter the devastation, one should never lose his footing, his maimed, in Avodas HaKodesh, in serving Hashem. One must remain steadfast in his holy work. Just like the fire would constantly burn on the altar, and even the strong grains were not able to douse that fire, so too, as difficult as certain periods may be in a person's life, we remain constant. We are steady with our faith intact. The community of Houston has shown that they have stood the test of the winds and the rain, of the flood and the water, of the devastation, of the damage. With their faith intact, looking ahead to the future, they will build bigger and better than ever before. When the Beis Yisrael was getting on in years, his health was frail. The doctor advised him to take a walk every day, and his gabbai, his secretary, would accompany him on all of his walks. One day, it was a warm morning in Yerushalayim. The Rebbe said quietly under his breath as he was walking, "Carly, Carly, it's cold, it's cold." The Gabbai said, "Rebbe, let's go home immediately. We've got to call the doctor. It's very warm." The Rebbe said, "No, I'm okay. I'm okay. But right now, the soldiers in the Hermon are freezing, and I feel their cold in my bones." I appeal to all the listeners throughout the world, to Nachum Segal, in the morning program. Please respond generously. Feel the cold in your bones. Feel what the people of Houston have gone through over the past weeks. Understand that their plight is our plight. Their lives and their future are our lives and our future. We are inextricably bound. Feel the need and the urgency of the moment, and please respond. I guarantee you, for every bit of help that we give to them, we will be rewarded, kefel kiflayim, many times over. This has been Rabbi David Goldwasser, wishing the entire community of Houston hatzloch and broch in the future, chazak ve'amatz.
Rabbi Goldwasser, you are unbelievable. What a tremendous message for this special show, and we greatly appreciate it. Rabbi Goldwasser asked everyone to keep everyone in Houston in mind, and we ask you to give as generously as possible. We saw the devastation with our own eyes, and we experienced, or we through the words of the people who were in the devastating situations, experienced what they went through to a degree, and experienced verbally, I mean. Anyway, we ask everyone to respond. HoustonJewish.org/HoustonFlood, HoustonJewish.org/HoustonFlood. Jacob Camaras, is that the right pronunciation? Camaras. Jacob Camaras is with us, and he is the editor-in-chief, managing director, I should say, of the JNS.org news service, based here in Houston, which is a secret for many.
Right.
Not a lot of people knew that he was based in Houston, Texas. They know that he's out there. They didn't know where. We found him.
That's right.
Thank you very much for being here, Jacob. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Explain to everybody in the audience first, what is the JNS.org news service?
Absolutely. So JNS.org, or the Jewish News Service, we provide content to Jewish media, print and online, around the country and around the world.
How many outlets do you think utilize your material?
About 40 to 50 per month utilize the material. About 100 total are on our distribution list.
How do you do all this? What's the system these days when we're in an era of great technological speed? Right. How does one go ahead and run JNS.org?
Besides my cloning machine.
That's what you need these days.
Right. Well, we have correspondents around the world. First of all, we do have a full-time staff of 3 writers and editors.
Right.
We also have correspondents who work with us around the world, several correspondents in Israel. And we're just gathering the news. A lot of the time, since the news, as you said, is so fast-moving, we're basically feeding off what other news people are breaking on the ground, and we're providing the longer view, the perspective, the analysis, because that's what we're able to do, and that's what,
That's why so many people turn to your service for commentary, for an extended look, so to speak, at an individual news story, a little bit more analysis, however you want to put it.
Yes.
You're out there to provide more in-depth coverage than others. Jacob Camaras is here. He's a JNS.org. Is that? I assume that people just go to that website. Can they sign up for a newsletter? What do they do over there?
Yeah, you can sign up for the newsletter. We send a weekly email newsletter. We are updating news throughout the day, but we choose not to inundate people with too much email, so we send out the newsletter once a week.
Is this news that people in the New York, New Jersey area insisted that someone like myself come down here and expose to the world what Houston, Texas and its Jewish community is going through?
I think so. I mean, I think that it's rare, first of all, even though Houston is a large city, fourth largest city in the country, it's rare for this Jewish community to get national attention. It's somewhat unfortunate for Houston to get national attention for a disaster and for many families a tragedy. But the story itself is newsworthy. It's certainly a story that someone from the New York area is coming down, I think, but what's most newsworthy, I think, is the community rebuilding efforts, the Jewish unity that's been displayed. It's been an inspiration to me as a person and as a professional.
It's such an important component of this story. The unity is incredible. The outreach from all aspects of life, not just Jewish life, has been amazing. And I mentioned earlier, you never know what type of theme this show is going to take. Once we hit the road and turn on the microphone, it's obvious that the theme that developed over the last couple of hours is that so many people in this country and the world think that everybody's essentially recovering and doing a pretty good job recovering and things are getting back to normal. I keep mentioning that I saw the Shul Sanctuary today figured, hey, it's going to be, it's going to look like they're on their way to be back on their feet, and it's just the opposite. There's so many people who are still mired in the aftermath of what happened back on that Monday night. Right. And that's a very important message, and I hope that if we do nothing else here today, I mean, I'd love to raise some money for this community and make sure people around the world know how to give. But if we do nothing else, let's at least assure everybody that the situation down here is a devastating one, and it's going to take a while before this community recovers. What made you move to Houston, Texas? You had been in so many different places in the United States. Why Houston?
It's a good question. It was mainly driven by my wife's job. My wife, Megan, is the founder and CEO of an educational startup. It's called FuelEd, fueledschools.org. They train teachers in social and emotional competencies to fill a gap in teacher training across the country. Many teachers just aren't trained in
not equipped with that
relationships and those kinds of skills. So she started this company and got clients in Houston, and we moved from LA to Houston for that reason, basically. And I, again, work remotely. Actually, the funders of JNS.org, I should say the founders of JNS.org are in Boston. So I met my wife in Boston. She wanted to move to Los Angeles.
See, it's funny, when you mentioned to me off the air that you work remotely, I still said to myself, it's funny you mentioned this, I said to myself, but wouldn't it be advantageous for him to be in the Eastern time zone? And then you mentioned that the founders are in Boston. I don't get you into any trouble, but I'm just curious if there's anything detrimental for being an hour away from the East.
Well, it's not that bad in the Central time zone, but I can say when I lived in Los Angeles for a year, I was getting up quite early, let's say 5 a.m.
That was a much bigger challenge.
Yes, and trying to keep pace with the East Coast Jewish media. That was a little bit of a challenge, but I did it.
Man, they have an advantage. Yeah. What can I tell you? Jacob Kamaras is with us, JNS.org. He is the managing director and editor-in-chief of the Jewish News Service. All right, we talked about the unity. We talked about the aspect of today's theme where people have to realize that people here are still going through a tremendous trials and tribulations in the aftermath of what's going on. Is there any angle to this story from your perspective that we are missing or needs to be emphasized?
Right. Well, I think that there is a turning point, being faced by individual families and the entire community. As a journalist, I've done some of my own coverage on this flood naturally. Right. I started off and I wrote a piece for JNS.org on this, and I couldn't bring myself to cover it as a news story at first because it was so personal. We lost a car, which was no big deal, really, and my wife and I happened to be stuck in an elevator for a minute that night in our building. So it was a pretty personal story, and I wrote about it from the personal perspective at first. But really the turning point for the entire community and families. These families are families who have been flooded are in the midst of making a life-changing decision. What to do with their house. Do they rebuild? Do they raise their house? Do they start over? These are big decisions.
Right.
And collectively, if you combine all the affected families into one Jewish community, that's a collective turning point, really, for the community. Where does the community go from here? Do the neighborhoods maintain their Jewish character? The unity is important, and it's inspiring to me to see how much everyone is volunteering, all the communal strength.
It is amazing.
But as a young person, who's still somewhat transient with my wife in terms of where we're going to live in the future, and for young people like us, I'm saying sort of 25 to 35 in our apartment building near the shul, it's a question whether, after the flood, what capacity the community will have. And, we're really rooting for the community, and we hope the rebuilding goes well. I mean,
we hope and pray that this goes well. JNS.org. People can sign up for the newsletter, and they can get information about all the great work you do. That is Jacob Camaras, who is the editor-in-chief of JNS Jewish News Service. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Nahum.
And thanks for welcoming us to Houston. Yes. And I am told that we have a very special guest with us, and that is a beloved mayor of Houston, Texas, Anise Parker, who is now serving in her third term as mayor, and has now overseen this episode, this Memorial Day storm that we, a few weeks later, got to see today with our own eyes, the aftermath of that storm. Mayor Parker, welcome to JM in the AM.
Thanks. I'm glad to be with you.
I appreciate you being here. I assume you've heard that we are here from the New York, New Jersey area to show support, to shed some light on what's going on down here in Houston, Texas, to remind people that there are still families who are devastated to the point where they have a tremendous recovery ahead of them. And it's great to be here. And I hope that people in Houston realize that some of the folks in New York and New Jersey care about what's going on down here.
We're glad to know that. And unfortunately, some of the folks in New York and New Jersey know what it's like to be flooded out.
Yeah, no question about that.
They've experienced it. We have a little bit different situation down here in that the land on which the city of Houston sits flooded when there wasn't a single human being here. It's probably going to flood forever. And it is a matter of topography. We built our city on the coastal prairie, and if it rains hard enough and fast enough, it will flood. The other thing that people need to know is that the streets are part of our drainage system by design. The streets are designed to hold water until the slow-moving little rivers that run through Houston can catch up with things, and God help us when the tide comes in and those little rivers can't empty out.
Right.
What happened in the Memorial Day flood is that we had three strikes. We had a significant amount of rain in a short period of time, on top of 2 weeks of really heavy, steady rain, and the ground was saturated. The rivers, and we have about 10 small rivers, we call them bios down here, that run through Houston. And then the storm crest from all the rain that was in central Texas, it was upstream of us, hit all at the same time. And the most impacted community is where we're sitting right now.
Right.
And it all backed up here. It was like putting a stopper in a bathtub, and the water just came up.
I would assume you have visited many of the homes that were devastated that night.
I have visited a few. Fortunately, most of the folks in this area had resources. They quickly got into it and pulled out the damaged materials in their homes. We also mobilized hundreds of volunteers who helped. In fact, it was pretty amazing. We used a lot of faith-based volunteers who were helping everybody, regardless of community. What's happened to us or with us in the past is when we had a flooding event, churches go out and they help their congregants.
Right.
This time we mobilized and said, we're going to send you wherever the need is, and it was really beautiful to see.
And they responded wonderfully. The mayor of Houston, Texas, the Honorable Anise Parker, is with us. We're here in Houston at the JCC. We're here and we're encouraging people to obviously support the Federation in their work. You know that the Federation has been doing an amazing job in terms of distributing money and trying to collect as much as possible for people in need. What about the federal government? When you, as a leader of the city of Houston, and you see the devastation and there are people in need, has the federal government been helpful in turning to Houston and saying, what can we do for you?
The FEMA response is, I think, the fastest we've ever seen. The major floods were on Monday night into Tuesday morning, and by Friday the president had declared the disaster, and FEMA was on the ground, and they had pre-staged, ready to go. So that's been good. It is a competition for federal dollars, however, and we are in a competition with much of the state of Texas that was hit by the same storm system and a series of floods that rolled downstream. And so they've already distributed tens of millions of dollars, actually, in Texas. And so the response is there, but it is a bureaucratic process, and a lot of folks get frustrated with the fact that they have to turn in a lot of paperwork to make things happen. What is important is that you have 60 days to register with FEMA from the date of the declaration, and so July 28th is the deadline.
We remember that from Sandy, right?
And then that goes away.
Right. So
now, since we're here in the Jewish Community Center and in the heart of the Jewish community in Houston, we do have some particular challenges that we're dealing with, including a couple of church communities, synagogues that were damaged, and situations where the members were living close proximity to each other. So it's the entire congregation that was impacted, and we want them to stay in the community. We want them to rebuild. The city is not interested in doing any buyouts. County's not interested in doing any buyouts. That's we don't believe that this is a situation that warrants it. We want people to get back into their homes, but it's been hard to get the word out and hard to because it's a one by one. Every situation is different. Although we are encouraging, going back to the very ultra-Orthodox congregation that we have here, that we can approach things in on a group basis.
Right.
Things like getting appraisals. You can do group appraisals. Things like we can come in. We're actually going to send our people to the synagogue and sit down doing special on the ground outreach, in addition to what we're doing here tonight.
Oh, so there are things that can be done as groups. And tonight's, is, from what I'm told, is a very helpful program that people come and get answers they weren't able to get till this point. Aside from a surprising Major League team and a really good NBA team, what else should my listeners know about Houston, Texas?
Hey, we have three women on the Women's World Cup team who play
Three from Houston?
Three from Houston, the Houston Dash.
You're real champions.
And Carly Lloyd.
Oh, my gosh. So in the sports category, you're doing fine down here.
Yeah, we are doing fine. Even the Texans, they've been doing okay. But yes, the Astros are very surprising.
Yeah, to say the least. Anything else we should know about the city of Houston? We're told it's one of the friendliest places in the United States. You agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. We are also arguably the most internationally diverse city in the United States, and I have had some smackdowns with folks from New York who argue with me about that. But the thing is that a lot of that diversity in New York is in the suburbs. Here, we just go out and annex the suburbs, so it's all part of the big Houston. But 1 in 5 Houstonians is foreign-born, and nobody outside of Houston believes that.
Well, it's a fact.
It is a fact.
They're going to have to live with that.
And we're approaching 1 in 4. And in fact, in some of our bedroom communities, for example, just south of us, the majority of the city council is foreign-born South Asian, very well integrated and active in the community.
Oh, there you go. Interesting. Mayor Parker, thank you so much for stopping by tonight. An honor to meet you, and great to have you on the air. And we'll encourage people to support Houston as much as they can.
And visit Houston. It's a great place to visit, too. When it's not raining.
Yes, stay away from the rain. Thank you very, very much. The mayor of the city of Houston, the Honorable Anise Parker. I remind everybody there is a fund from the Jewish Federation, HoustonJewish.org, HoustonJewish.org /Houston Flood, HoustonJewish.org /Houston Flood. And this is one of the most amazing stories. I was reading this on the plane, and I could not believe we were going to meet people from this incredible family. There's a bakery in Houston called the Three Brothers Bakery. And you just have to remind me who our guests are. The Three Brothers Bakery. And we have representatives, believe it or not, of the Three Brothers Bakery here. And this is really an incredible story. It's Janice. Help me out here, Mark. Janice and Bobby Juker are here. Thank you very much for being here. We hear you're two of the most incredible pillars of the Houston community. Thank you very much for visiting us here tonight at JM in the AM.
Thank you very much.
This story goes back to Europe, quite obviously. We're talking about a story of real survival. How your family got to Houston eventually is a story in and of itself, but go back to the point where those who ended up founding your bakery and coming to the United States, we didn't know if they would survive the next day, right? Essentially, that's an accurate portrayal.
That would be accurate.
That would be accurate. So this goes back to, who are we talking about?
Well, it's been in my family I'm the fifth generation.
Right.
For almost 200 years, we've been in the bakery business, my family has. So that's what they knew. I mean, they knew the bakery business.
So what happens when World War II begins?
My dad runs to Russia.
Right. Because they were in, what country were they in?
They were in Poland.
They're in Poland. He goes to Russia.
He
essentially
runs away,
escapes and gets to Russia. Right.
Works in a coal mine. Gets black lung.
And desperately wants to work in a bakery again.
Heals himself. Goes to work in a bakery. Lives on top of the oven. Doesn't have any money for shoes. Is wearing flour sacks for shoes. The story goes like so many Holocaust survivors. His mother goes to find him, sends someone to find him 3 times. They finally find him on top of the oven with no shoes, living in this bakery. Brings him back to Poland. The day that they left, left very early in the morning. The day that they left, the Germans came in, rounded up all the Jews, and killed them all. So he is very, very lucky, like so many.
A remark. I mean, to think about, escaping to Russia, coming back, everything that ends up happening to the community and the family, and then he's able to survive is just unbelievable. At what point does he make it to the United States?
1949.
And
come to the United States.
And why Houston, Texas?
Because his sister was here.
His sister was in Houston?
Yes.
And
they were supposed to go to Colorado, and sister wrote him a letter and said, "You need to come here. The streets are lined with gold."
And she meant
it, right? You need to come to Houston, Texas. So they came to Houston, Texas.
Obviously, because of the bakery background, felt he had to found some type of bakery here.
Well,
I would guess.
Yeah, they got sponsored by someone in the bakery business who didn't really want to sponsor them, but they sponsored them. And they started Three Brothers Bakery shortly after they got here in a very small place. And it had no parking, and they didn't speak English. They didn't know. Everyone in the shtetl walked to the bakery. They didn't know you had to have parking. So it was kind of it was a learning experience.
A little bit of a culture shock?
Yeah, very much.
They made $19 the first day.
That's a family fact?
That's a family fact.
They made $19 the first day. Yes. Actually, it seems pretty good for 19.
I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
And we actually even know the first customer that walked through the door. We still are in touch with him.
Yeah, we've
Clyde Cannon.
Clyde Cannon was the first customer of Three Brothers Bakery, and he was going to high school, and
stopped on his way to high school.
Stopped on his way. The first day that they opened was the first one in line. Came in the bakery, the very first customer. When we got hit by Ike.
What year was that?
That was 2008.
Yeah.
This man called us up and said, I was the first customer at Three Brothers Bakery. We're like, you're kidding us. No, I was in line. I was the first one in line waiting for the bakery to open. And I was the first customer.
The bakery thrives today and it has other branches, right? I mean, it's grown since then, correct?
Yeah.
And Clyde was our first customer for each of our new stores.
Are you serious?
And when we reopened after Ike, yes.
It's like our lucky charm.
And he and Sigmund and another gentleman, Joe, meet for coffee at one of our stores every Monday.
Unbelievable. I'll tell you. Hey, if it works, keep going with it, right? Janice and Bobby Juker are here. We're talking about the Three Brothers Bakery. So before, I want to ask you about Houston, about the community down here. We've gotten perspectives from so many different people, from so many walks of Jewish life here during this program. But go back for a second. What's the message of this whole story? You told us a story of survival. People can read about it online. There are many articles that have been written about your father and what his family went through. Yeah, he ends up here in Houston. Is there... We could all come up with the greater lesson from this whole story, but is there anything in particular you would say about this story of survival that just makes it so unique and so remarkable?
You know, the hard work ethic that they had. I've never seen three guys work as hard as these guys, and just their survival is, they will not fail. It will not happen, and just the constant ability to survive is really the story behind the Three
So
Brothers.
as much as we acknowledge, fate, the one above, and the role that all had in survival, you're saying they were survivalists. This was their MO.
Yeah, and yes, we got hit by this horrible flood, and got water in and had a lot of damage, but the story is we're going to survive.
Well, that brings us to today. Were you guys closed for a period of time?
We were closed for 3 days.
Relatively lucky compared to some others? Or?
Relatively lucky. My wife did a program what is it called? The MBA.
The Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program.
Right.
And so she did that program, and she met a guy in there who had a Serve Pro dealership, franchise, whatever you call it. So we saw it was coming. We called our employee. He's up in his knees to water. He's telling us everything's flooded in here. My wife gets on the phone at 3:30 in the morning, calls this guy up and wakes him up and says, "Hey, we need you to come down and clean us up ASAP." By 3:30 in the afternoon, the guy was at our building cleaning up with 10 guys and 4 trucks and 10,000 things.
They have green trucks, and it was like seeing that knight in shining armor come
when
galloping up in their green trucks. Right. Yes, they were our heroes.
We had mud in the back. It was, they were hauling it out in buckets, and we threw a bunch of stuff away, of course, and they got us cleaned up and got us.
By the end of that week, you were back?
Yeah.
By the next day.
By the next day, you were back?
By the next day, we were already prepping so we could
open for the end of the week.
And we have other stores, so as long as that production facility's down, the other stores have nothing to sell. So we had to open.
Sort of like it's the commissary, right? It provides for everybody else.
That's right.
America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listeners-sponsored WFMU East Orange, WMFU Mount Hope, Rockland County at 91.9 on the FM dial. Around the world on the web, jmnam.org. Janice and Bobby Jukar. It's the Three Brothers Bakery. If you want to read a story of tremendous Jewish survival and really an incredible Jewish family, all you got to do is Google that online, and a lot of articles about what your family went through will pop up. Before I let you go, give me the perspective, and you've been here so many years, the perspective on Jewish Houston. What is so unique about this community? What could you add to the conversation we've been having about this unique community?
The people here in Houston are just so warm and inviting and make you feel really, really like you want to be here. And it's about the people here, and the people are tremendous here in Houston, Texas. They will have you over and treat you like no other.
It's all about the people, huh?
It's all about the people.
That's the message for all the communities.
This guy right here.
This is also one of the great people of Houston. Is this Ed Schreiber?
This is Ed Schreiber.
This is Ed Schreiber. Ed Schreiber from Bancorp South Insurance Services here in Houston, Texas. Before we move on to Ed, I thank Janice and Bobby. Thank you. Look forward to visiting you at the Three Brothers Bakery, and great to have you on the air. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We're at the JCC down in Houston, Texas, everybody, the epicenter of activity for the Jewish community tonight. We're pre-recording our Wednesday morning show on a Tuesday, and tonight here at the JCC, there's much discussion going on with representatives of FEMA and others that are helping people in difficult situations right now recover from the after effects of the Memorial Day Shavuos storm. Ed Schreiber is the Houston Region President for Bancorp South Gem Insurance Services. Welcome to JM in the AM.
Thank you very much.
I can imagine this has been a challenging evening for you. Am I correct?
Well, there's a room full of people in there whose lives have just been totally turned upside down. It's a difficult process. And so part of our job is to advise and to work with and sympathize. And as we say down here, it's not our first rodeo. And it's not Janice's first rodeo. And that's why I wanted Janice to stay, because Janice went through Hurricane Ike, which was our version of Hurricane Sandy.
Right.
I mean, where you had the wind, you had the water, you had just...
the perfect storm, as they say.
Right, the total destruction.
Right.
And Janice became one of our poster children for how to get through the process. And you're laughing now. We weren't laughing in 2008. And Janice actually wrote one of the finest how-to manuals of what to do to be prepared when you own a business. You know, the things you have to do, the records you have to keep, the collections you have to do, the service providers you have to have on speed dial practically.
Right.
And it's a lesson that your individual outcome, unfortunately, depends a lot on your individual community, the people you know, the people that can help, the people you've helped, and the phone calls. How quickly can you make the phone calls? Tell them how quickly you were on this time.
Oh, this time she described it for us. It was amazing.
This was our best transition for a disaster. This is our third disaster and our best.
Experience is everything, huh?
Experience is everything, and it's also who you know, and knowing, like the ServPro person was on the phone with Ed's agency, Gem. I still call them Gem Insurance. They have another name now, but without them, I mean, we would be out of business without this insurance company. So I give him all the credit. Having a great insurance agent makes all the difference in the world, and they're in there in the trenches with you, and they wrote the right coverage for us, and that's key.
My PR person sitting next to me.
I'm sitting here stunned because I know people that had. Let me see if I remember this correctly. Who had flood insurance but not hurricane insurance, or hurricane insurance but not flood insurance, and ended up losing millions of dollars worth of inventory. You don't want to see businesses close.
Right.
You want to work with them in advance to make sure they're covered with every nuance of language that any insurer would insist upon.
Well, and at least clients don't buy everything we suggest to them, but what we try to do, Janice says she does.
Yeah.
She does.
She covers all the bases.
Well, Janice has had experience.
Right.
A lot of people, you have to make a financial judgment. What do I take? What do I don't take? What do I self-insure? What do I cover? And, fortunately in Janice's case, Susan Wheel, who's one of my associates, who's worked with Janice since she became a client now, I don't know.
It was right before Ike.
It was right before Ike, so probably 2007.
Right.
Sat down with Janice, went over coverages, took what she had, said, we think you should do this instead of this, and put a program together that when it came time to say, how did it work? Let's go back test this and see how it worked. And in Janice's case, it worked beautifully. Was it easy? No. Did it take a year and a half? 2 years to get back to where she was? But fortunately, in that 2-year period, there was income coming in because of the way the policies were written. There was enough coverage to cover the damage to the ovens and the cases, and to pay the employees. So it just worked.
Do you work with homeowners as well?
Oh yeah, we have a large homeowners book.
You're one of the homeowners.
Yeah. We had about 40 homes flooded, and probably bought 150 cars in this last storm.
And there are people we saw today that are very concerned about what they are entitled to, and I assume they mean both FEMA and insurance company money. You don't want to see them leave town, I'm sure. You want to see them rebuild. You don't want to see businesses close. You want to see them, rebuild and rebound. Right. But yet, people are coming here tonight really with a big question mark. They just don't know yet.
Well, and I think that's like any storm. And I know this is a hard thing to say, we don't have the question issue on this storm that we had on Hurricane Ike and Hurricane Sandy, where you had fights between the flood insurers and the windstorm insurers.
Correct.
So in many senses...
Is it a hurricane or not a hurricane? Right.
that question's not on the table.
Right.
So this will be an easier.
This is a flood.
This is a flood. Everybody knows this flood. If you had flood insurance,
Right.
you're going to get some money.
Right.
If you didn't have flood insurance, you're not going to get any money. So in that sense, it's a little easier, but it just takes time because with all the FEMA changes since Ike and since Katrina and since Sandy, now the building codes are different. The stipulations of when you can build, how you can build are different. It is not easy, and so now that's the difference this year between previous storms is the layers of complexity of getting your building permit, of deciding whether you have to elevate your house.
Right.
Is FEMA going to approve your plan? So that's the layer that's here now that wasn't there before.
And also, the insurance doesn't cover living expenses. That's where FEMA comes in. So even though you have insurance, you think, oh, I can't apply to FEMA,
Right.
but you can apply to FEMA to get that.
There's so many things people need to know, I'll tell you. And we want to see the community rebound. And by the way, there's another aspect, and that is that great places like the Federation, Jewish Family Services, are reaching out, and I'm sure many other religious groups and other groups are reaching out, trying to help with whatever funds they can. So we will also ask people out there who are listening to remember to keep those funds active and to contribute as much as possible. Everybody together, hopefully, can help everybody here rebound.
That's what we're here for. It's a great community. Houston's always been a very giving community and a very accepting community. And you asked Bobby what makes Houston special. Why is Houston a special place, and what's different about it?
Correct.
Houston's the kind of place that nobody really cares where you came from. You're here. You're working. You're part of the community.
You're now a Houstonian.
That's right. You're now a Houstonian. We don't really care where you went to high school. We really don't care about those things. We care about, can you get the job done? Can you be part of the community? Are you willing to give? Because if you're willing to give, we're willing to give.
When we were hit by Ike, a little boy came to us with money out of his piggy bank.
That's heartwarming, I know. Mm-hmm. Janice, thank you. Ed, thank you. Pleasure meeting you both.
Thanks.
And this, I believe, is, where are we here? This is the director of the Hebrew Free Loan Association, Rachel Yorowitz. Am I right, Rachel? Yep. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
A pleasure to have you here. JM and the AM as we broadcast live from Houston, Texas. Well, live pre-recorded on a Tuesday night for a Wednesday morning. Well, if you are in charge of the Hebrew Free Loan Society, the Hebrew Free Loan Association of Houston, Texas, which is almost 80 years old, right?
Exactly.
If you're in charge, you must have had a very busy month and a half.
Oh, sure have.
I could only imagine. Hebrew Free Loans in so many communities goes back a long, long time.
Many years.
Essentially interest-free loans, right? Helping people who need to get back on their feet, setting up a reasonable payment schedule for them so they're able to handle all this.
What we do.
What's the last 6 weeks been like?
We've been inundated with applications, phone calls, very, very needy clients calling, asking for help, and we're there to help them out.
And in many cases, not always a gigantic amount of money is needed, right? In some cases, they just need certain basic expenses taken care of immediately.
It's about we've had $500 loans to $10,000 to $15,000 loans that they've been asking for, and we're here to give it to them. We go through an application process. We request why they need those loans and things like that, and we would like to do whatever we can to help them out.
What's life like pre-storm for the Hebrew Free Loan?
That's a great question.
Pre-storm, it's like
sure.
It's a little bit more of a calm atmosphere, I assume, and you take applications and people have needs, and you're able to speak to them and arrange things, etc. This was more of an emergency, very hectic type of situation.
Emergency situation here. Before our Memorial Day flood, we have applications coming in for home repairs, for medical expenses, for car purchases, things like that.
Necessities.
And necessities like people don't have the money for food to put on their tables, medicine, things like that.
So 99% of the requests in the last 6 weeks are flood related, or somewhere close to that?
And because we've had so much exposure, like we're doing tonight here at the JCC, we've had so much exposure, and people are recognizing us and coming up with different needs as well. So we're having needs for flood victims.
You're
for
becoming
flood
even more high
necessities.
profile now.
Exactly.
People are learning about how generous you are and how willing you are to be out there and help people. Rachel Yorowitz is here, Hebrew Free Loan Association here in Houston, Texas. You can imagine how they've been inundated over the last few weeks since the flood of Motzei Shavuos, Memorial Day. First of all, was your home damaged at all during the storm?
My home is not not in the community that was affected most.
So yours is intact, thank
So
God.
thank God, ours is. We had a lot of flooding on the streets, but nothing came in.
Right.
We're not in the flood zone.
But no doubt you've seen a lot of the damage that's gone on.
Yes.
How is this community? We'll talk about the Jewish community now in particular. We had a chance to speak about Houston in general earlier. How is this community rebounding? From your point of view, is everyone still in a state of shock and it's going to take a long time? Like, how would you describe what's happening here?
Everyone is slowly coming back. The whole community has been so helpful, whether it be meals, doing laundry, carpooling, contributions, whatever it takes. And everyone lent a hand in any way that they could. If they couldn't contribute financially, then they did it through meals or through carpooling or for, having people's families over for weeks.
A lot of volunteer work going on down here, to say the least.
And that's amazing. That's something that we do very well with here.
It is amazing. I think the Jewish community in general does it well. Something in particular about this town really steps things up. I mean, that's obvious from our short visit here. Very lucky. Hebrew Free Loan Association, Rachel Yorowitz, website. I see on the website you have a place where people could donate.
Yes.
So which website should we call people's attention to?
Our website is www.hfla.net.
HFLA for Hebrew Free Loan Association.net.
We recently started an endowment fund as we're a small organization helping many people within the community. And we rely on small donations. So we started an endowment to raise money for the future.
Information about that on the website?
Yes, there is a tab on our website to donate to the endowment, and whatever you can give, that would be great.
All right, thank you so much. I hope our listeners will come through with something, and I really appreciate you visiting us.
Thank you for having us.
A pleasure. Continue your amazing work on behalf of everybody out there. That's Rachel Yorowitz, Hebrew Free Loan Association. Sam Pollock is here. The last time Sam was alluded to on the air, Yoni Pollock, his son, was on the radio just after the storm to describe how his father was sleeping on a kitchen counter, I believe he said.
Didn't get much sleep that night.
You didn't sleep much, but you were trying to rest a little bit on the kitchen counter.
That was my plan of action.
There was nowhere else to go.
It was right after Yontif, and the Rockets were on that night. So the TV was on, didn't know anything about the weather. Came home from shul, it was pouring rain. Next thing we knew, there was a little water in the house, and before you knew it, it was 40 inches.
What does your house look like now?
Nothing about under 40 inches. We have a chandelier that's there and a few ceiling fans.
Your son, when he was on the air, and I'm told he's out of town. Is that true?
Just graduated YU.
Mazel tov to you. Your son, when he gave his report to us, seemed very positive, extremely optimistic. I said, this is a kid who just went through a storm like this a couple of nights ago? And he seemed to indicate that you guys will rebound, rather easily.
Yeah, we have a lot of faith. This was not the worst night of my life. Over 5 years ago, I had a double transplant. I was blessed with a 20-year younger heart and kidney. There was a buy one, get one free sale, so I took both of them. And
so with things in perspective, now I know where the Pollocks are coming from.
This was nothing. But thank God we survived. We're looking future. And we're going to make it.
Where are you staying now?
We're at a friend's house who went away for the summer, and we're going to rent the house for the next year. Looking at 2 different neighborhoods, and there's a housing shortage in frum communities.
You're staying in Houston, huh?
Oh, for sure. I'm here 35 years. I left Brooklyn. Would never go back except for a good pastrami sandwich.
What an honor to meet you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
Take
Sam
care. Thanks for
Pollock,
coming.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
He's a resident of Houston, Texas, and a very, very optimistic one, to say the least. Okay, so we have here Remind me. Who do we have here on the air? Anybody want to tell me who's here? Is this? You handed it to me on a piece of paper. I'm sorry about that. And this? This is Holly, Janelle, and Amy? Not in that order. Not in that order? Holly, Janelle, Amy. Welcome to the show. How do you like that? What do you want? I was not handing things in proper form. What can I tell you? Anyway, these three ladies are three people who could tell this remarkable story of the last 6 weeks. Where do we begin? Do we begin with the bad or the good? With the damage that this community has suffered, or with the incredible volunteerism and the amazing stories that have gone on to give people hope and to really help people start rebounding? Where do we start?
Well, I think the two of them are so intertwined. When people saw in the community the level of flooding and damage, then my son and other people, Janelle's son, Avi Passy, they went out in canoes, they rescued 12, 13, 14 families, got people out that needed medication, helped them, and that was the initial response on the ground.
Did you know your kids had it in them to get into a canoe and start rescuing people?
Yes.
You knew it? You knew they were the adventurous type?
My son's definitely the adventurous type, but I was a little concerned because this is the type of thing that even like the Houston Fire Department,
right?
They're professionals, and even they
would hesitate, right?
Well, they lost some people, and one of their canoes overturned. It's really dangerous. It's serious work. So I was glad I knew about it kind of afterwards.
I don't blame you. And they were responsible, as you said, for a large number of people being rescued, which is pretty amazing.
Including Sam Pollock, who was just here, who spent 12 hours on his kitchen counter and being a double transplant recipient, he couldn't be in that contaminated water. I mean,
he had to do his best to stay away from it.
Right. I mean, all of our kids got sick one way or another. I just told Holly today that her son complained of after effects of being in this contaminated water also. So it was a big disaster that could have happened that didn't, but there was still. It was dangerous.
Yeah, I got to make this point to the audience. It's so important. Aside from the fact, and we've heard so many stories and seen so many pictures, aside from the fact that people are wading through 3-4 feet of water, that water is not spring water. That water is filthy, contaminated, can certainly lead to sickness, as you indicated, and it just adds a whole new layer of challenge to deal with when you're in that type of emergency situation.
Right.
That's correct. It requires antibiotics.
Right.
Yes. As she knows, her daughter got sick. My daughter got sick. I mean, it was really just from helping other people. My daughter's in 6th grade. So she was helping to clear up and to muck out. Holly's son was out there being one of the first responders, and some of the people who were rescued were very vulnerable people. So it was very difficult to get them out.
Elderly, couldn't move around well.
All ill. And so there was a number of overturned, and the water stayed around for a long time. So everyone who had something that touched the water had to get rid of it. So once the water once the bathtub opened, right, then Janelle was somehow appointed the point person to help everybody muck out and take out, and our kids at the Robert M. Barron Academy, they actually were excused from finals if they volunteered to help mucking out. So we had one kid who arranged for all these groups of kids to come in and just help people throw away their lives, basically. Throw away their family photos and their books and you don't go out and buy a house full of furniture. You take it piece by piece by piece, and
you have your pictures, and you have your collectibles, and you have all of that. And these are mostly one-story houses, so it's different from what happened in New York, and that's with Sandy, and
people had somewhere to run to.
That's right. They had their second stories. A lot of it was the basements were flooded in Sandy, but here this is your entire first. your entire only floor that gets flooded, and so you lose everything.
Barron School has how many students approximately?
About 300
Okay.
students
Of
from
the-
ECE, whatever, early childhood,
Right.
all the way through 12th
Of
grade.
the 300, how many were directly affected by this devastation?
Of the-
What's the
12%,
estimate?
12% of the
So
kids.
a good number in
Yeah,
the school,
right,
and
right.
obviously, as you said, many of them who were not would then volunteer and get involved in the whole process.
Even the ones who were affected were volunteering.
Right.
So they were out there. Avi Passy was one who was right out there immediately rescuing people when they're in his boat, and his family's swimming across the street to higher ground.
Yeah. The Barron School has made a national reputation for itself for Jewish heroism in general. Did they come through the students in this case in the area of Jewish
They were
heroism?
phenomenal. 1,000 hours.
Anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about can Google it, but Barron's always made a statement about being out there and being filled with Jewish pride. They demonstrated a lot of pride in this case as well.
They really did. 1,000 hours, 60 high school students, and 1,000 volunteer hours that were counted so far. And that's not all in yet.
And the middle school kids were also helping to make sandwiches and to do
Right.
other things.
In whatever way they can help.
And the other thing is, a lot of these families were housing displaced families as well, giving their clothes away. It has been a phenomenal community experience and a phenomenal Achdut experience also, not just among the various shades of orthodoxy
Right.
here. I mean, we were calling Chabad, Rav Chaim, where do you need, we got a house here, can you go there? Do you got a team here, can we go there? It was just really, I spent 18 years in New York. I've never seen anything quite like this. And it was phenomenal, and there's a lot of pride, but now we got to clean up, and our shul is we're back to one room. I mean, my daughter's got a bat mitzvah coming up. What are you going to do with that?
Right, so you're referring, I assume, to Rabbi Gelman Shul,
Rabbi
right?
Gelman, yes.
And we were there today. The room you're referring to is essentially, I guess, a social hall. It's now been converted into an everything room, right?
Right.
An all-purpose room at this point,
Right.
including davening. I mentioned that, and by the way, Rabbi Gelman, I said this earlier in the show, very dear to so many people in the New York, New Jersey area, old friend of all of ours, and he'd be here if he wasn't away, out of town. He'd be here, I'm sure, at the show, and we had a chance to visit his shul today and saw the outside of his devastated home as well, which so many of us saw photos online. And I keep saying that we thought that we'd walk into, at least I thought I'd walk into the shul today and see some semblance of recovery. It's just the opposite. They've stripped the shul and the entire sanctuary completely bare to this point, and the only thing that is in any type of, has any type of action is that one room you described. But the entire school that's there and the main sanctuary and the supplemental sanctuary, and it's all in a
But
state of devastation.
I think then again our community has come through for us. The school is temporarily relocating to another place for 2 years.
Right.
Brit Shalom
Right.
graciously agreed to host them. The Beth Yeshurun has graciously agreed to help us with all of our simchaot and other things that we are doing. And so it may be small in the one room, but I think we have an amazing community that stands behind us and stands with us. So I think we will recover.
No question about it. I don't want to lose the emphasis on the positive, because there is so much positive that we saw. Just many of us who care didn't realize that the community is going through what they're going through. That's all.
The other thing is, so tomorrow night we're going to have a meeting to decide what, as a congregation, we want to do
Right.
with the synagogue building.
Rebuild, move, do something different, whatever it is.
There are limited choices
Right.
because of two things. One are the available locations, and the other is, quite honestly, money. Because the same people who would go to for a capital campaign, they're rebuilding houses.
Sure.
So
Plus, they don't know when the next storm's coming.
Right, so we all have to mitigate against that. And we're going to have some pretty high up houses when we're done.
Can
We
you
have to
beat
raise
the water
them.
eventually? Can you build your house high enough to beat the water?
Right, that's going to be the race. Can you get up 6 feet? So it's and we're just really worried about keeping the community together. I moved from New York 18 years. I love it here. It's a great place to raise kids. You don't have to schlep the stroller to the grocery store in 3 feet of snow. It's really wonderful.
No snow down here.
No, it's just not that much. But, are we going to be able to keep it together? And that's what we're facing now. And I'm sure people up in New York and New Jersey, they get it because of Sandy, because,
There were people, I mean, I will tell you, one of our friends in the shul, he had his entire house knocked off of his foundation by the force of the water.
Right.
I mean, that's incredible. So,
we remember that from Sandy.
Yeah.
Lots of that happened.
yeah, and in fact, one of the families with 3 little kids, they came down after Sandy. They swam across this torrent of water this time to get their kids to higher ground to safety. And they said, look, they were renting. They're lucky. But everyone's got a choice to make now.
Yeah, no question about it.
And we thank you for coming down here also, because to also for us to know that people care about us outside of Houston, and it's more than just our little community, trying to keep things together and keep the families solid.
Holly, Janelle, and Amy, I thank all of you. How hard is it to get a hold of a canoe, by the way?
Actually, people have them now in their houses.
They do have them in their house, so it wasn't that difficult.
They've got them.
I just found it funny. Yeah, my kids grabbed a canoe and went and say, I'm wondering, wow, how fast can you get a canoe? Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.
Very much. Kol hakavod. Some amazing people doing incredible work and leading wonderful families in the aftermath of the big storm, the Motzei Shavuos Memorial Day storm here in Houston, Texas. Don't forget the web address where you can donate, houstonjewish.org/HoustonFlood. Again, that's houstonjewish.org/HoustonFlood. We want to thank all the people responsible for us being here. First of all, those in the New York, New Jersey area who felt it was very important that we be here. Thank you. They probably prefer to remain anonymous, but I thank them very much. Lee Wunsch and the staff of the Jewish Federation of Houston, especially Rodi Franco and Jennifer Friedberg. Rodi and Jennifer, thank you. I know you worked very hard with Mark over the last couple of weeks, and I thank you very much. Joel Dinkin, the Executive Vice President, and the staff of the JCC of Houston, thank you. Rabbi Barry Gelman, who I mentioned, of course, who no doubt if he was in town would be joining us. And we wish Rabbi Gelman tremendous Hatzlacha Rabbah as he rebuilds both on a personal level and, of course, with the entire congregation. Rabbi Barry Gelman of the United Orthodox Synagogue of Houston, you have an unbelievably beautiful shul. That we were able to tell earlier today, even through the devastation. So continued Hatzlacha. Lonnie Schooler of Jackson Walker LLP. Lonnie joined us earlier with a conversation regarding the history of Jewish Houston. Jacob Camaras of the Jewish News Service. Thank you, Jacob. Janice and Bobby Juker, the owners of Three Brothers Bakery, and Allison of Integrate. Thank you. Linda Berger, CEO of Jewish Family Services. Rabbi Gidon Moskowitz, who was here with the Meyerland Minyan. Rachel Urwitz from the Houston Hebrew Free Loan Association. Holly, Janelle, and Amy, we thank them again. Mayor Anise Parker, who was with us, the mayor of Houston, Texas. Thank you for joining us. What an honor that was to have the mayor of Houston join us and thank us for coming down here and joining us. How does Holly pronounce her last name? Sin? C-I-N? Holly Sin. Welcome to JM in the AM.
Hello, nice to be here.
I want to thank you publicly for inviting us into your home earlier today. Your home's a little different than if we would have been there a couple of months ago. Right, a little bit different.
Yeah, a little bit.
It was interesting, the story you told us, and I'd love for the audience to hear that you went to sleep that night, and Monday night after Shavuot, it was a 3-day yontif. And 3-day yontifs are not easy to begin with, Holly. You know that, right? and then look what God had in store for you after the 3-day yontif.
Exactly.
You went to sleep that evening, and all of a sudden, while you heard some type of slushing noise in the middle of your semi-sleep, you realized as you touched the floor, or tried to, that you were in the middle of a big flood in your bedroom, which is on the first floor of your home. And that's where it all began, and the adventure of that night just, kept going and kept going.
The adventure, yeah.
Pretty amazing, huh?
It was.
Where are you staying now, by the way? Where have you made your temporary home?
We've been staying in the home of our dear friends, Dr. Ruth Katz and Arik Sharon, who are in Israel at the moment. But they took us in. They have taken us in before. They were our flood. They were our evacuation central.
They're your flood family.
They were our flood family. Every time a hurricane was coming and we thought a flood was going to come, we went and took refuge in their home. So they are in Israel. They're coming back And actually, we plan to evacuate from their home so they can have it free from visitors. And we're going to stay at another home of our friends who are also in Israel, our dear friends, Rabbi and Fagi Grossman. We'll be there for a month. So that's the plan for now.
Were you, in retrospect, were you able to save from the house what you would have wanted to save if you had time to think about what you wanted to take out of that house?
Yeah, thank God. Unlike other people who really, lost much more in terms of personal goods and memories and stuff like that, we really did not lose things that can't be replaced. We got about 2 feet of water, less than that. And all of our Sfarim were up high. Most of my pictures were up high. My wedding album was below the coffee table, and it was in a box, and it did get wet. But I guess somewhat miraculously, I was able to take it out. And all of the pictures inside, although the album itself was moist, damaged, but the actual pictures inside, and I don't have any, it was 18 and a half years ago, I don't have any digital remnant of that to reproduce it. But the pictures themselves were not damaged, and I'm confident, although I haven't looked into it because other pressing matters, I will be able to rebind the book.
And you joked with us, and the reason I'm laughing is because you joked with us because you found the wedding album. You told your husband, I guess, we're still married.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That was a message from God. So.
At least that. And look, as we've, and this is no secret, people know how human beings are. It's always the most sentimental and important collectibles, so to speak, that mean the most. That comes after physical safety. Thank God your family made it through physically okay. There were people in this town who met a terrible end.
Yeah,
right.
Who suffered.
And
I didn't have my kids were older. My sons, I have 3 sons, 2 of whom were at home at the time, almost 13, and 12 and a half, and almost 14, actually. And so that was fine. We weren't on tables. We weren't in any rescue.
So we leave your home. And our general manager, Miriam L. Wallach, makes the following comment. She says, "Could you imagine the one thing that this woman Holly says to us at the end of the visit is that I need that. How can I not rebuild this house, and how can we not rebuild this neighborhood and synagogue? Because I need more visitors, more guests. I need to entertain more people who are, who want a nice Shabbos atmosphere, whatever the case may be. That's interesting that would be foremost on your mind as you're going through this whole difficult experience."
Well, I'm really hoping that our community won't take as big of a hit as it seems. We're a small community, and 5 of our families, and we're not a large community, 5 of our families were flooded, and a few of them are deciding to leave as a result of this and not necessarily rebuilding. And so, it's not just my house that I'm worried about. It's my community. But, it's a shame because we have a really wonderful, small, close-knit community.
We met Rabbi Moskowitz earlier.
He's been absolutely fantastic, a real leader and a real inspiration for all of us, keeping positive and helping out as much as he possibly can. We couldn't ask for anything more from him and from Malka, his wife. They've just been, true Hasidim for us, true help for the community. The truth is that most of our neighborhood is not in the flood zone. However, some of us are in the flood zone, but most are not. But the perception of our community is that it's in the flood zone, so you might not want to buy a house there. But it's really not the actual truth. There are houses further away from the bayou that have never flooded before, and they're lovely, and we really have a beautiful neighborhood. So it's a little bit sad for me.
Yeah, I understand that. What's the big lesson from all of this as you think about the recovery and the rebuilding that's going to have to happen in your family situation, and you are concerned, obviously, about the future of the community in general? What is the big takeaway from all this?
Buy insurance.
That's it, huh?
Don't go uninsured. No, look, Hashem sends us challenges, and hopefully He sends us the wherewithal to overcome the challenges. As I said, I wouldn't want to be in a situation that other people were in. I wouldn't want to be in, nobody's sick, nobody's dying.
Right.
It's all something that can definitely be overcome. It's exhausting, it's tiring, but we know that there's a good light at the end of this tunnel, and God willing, we should make it through.
Well, thank you for joining us. I hope next time I visit your home, I will be able to be one of those guests that you crave so much. It would be wonderful.
We have a bar mitzvah December 25th. If you're in town, please join us.
All right, it'll be a big celebration.
God willing, the house will be in order by that time.
Bezrat Hashem. Thank you very much, Holly Sid. Holly is one of the people that has a positive outlook, even though she may not think so. Seems to me like she has a positive outlook about everything that's about to happen down here in Houston. I remind you that the Federation has a website where you can donate at houstonjewish.org, houstonjewish.org/HoustonFlood. That's houstonjewish.org/HoustonFlood. I mentioned Rabbi Gelman earlier, and again, he happens not to be in town this week, but if he was, he'd certainly be among our wonderful hosts. His president of the synagogue, correct? President of the synagogue is Max Reichenthal. Hope I pronounced that properly. Reichenthal. I gave it a little European touch.
That's good.
Max Reichenthal is the president of the United. Remind me about the name of the synagogue.
United Orthodox
I don't know
Synagogue.
why I can't get that straight. United Orthodox Synagogue. You were hosting us earlier today as we toured the synagogue. One of the points I keep making, and I know for our listeners at this point it's going to be really repetitive, but I'm going to make it again, is that when I walked into the synagogue, I assumed after seeing the pictures from 6 weeks ago and everything Rabbi Gelman had posted and sent to family and friends, etc., I had thought that I would see a sanctuary that's sort of rebuilding, that's sort of in the initial stages of coming back. And of course, it's just the opposite. You're at a stage now 6 weeks after the flood where the main sanctuary is completely devastated. We're not quite sure what the future brings, and where the synagogue in general is really in one all-purpose room at this point. So people have to realize that, 6 weeks later, many of us think that the recovery has began. It's going to take quite a while to get everything back on its feet.
Yes, it will take quite a while. We first want to take care of our family members, the members of the synagogue and their families and their homes. And the team that we have is doing a great job with that, and it's still going on. And now we're getting together with focus groups and groups of members to give us their ideas and their opinions on what to do, so that we don't just make decisions based on what we think. I have a business of my own, but I really try to make sure when I run the synagogue that I make sure I listen to other people as well.
How many families are in the synagogue?
325 plus.
It's a nice number, to say the least. And do we have any idea how many were directly affected by the storm?
Possibly 60 that were flooded to the point of being out of their homes. We had another 10
a large
to 15.
percentage.
It's huge. And we have another 10 that were damaged as far as their garages, like ourselves.
Right.
My wife and I.
And we mentioned this earlier with some of the parents. Obviously, I'm sure you saw many of the kids in the neighborhood and volunteers in the synagogue go and help those who are in difficult situations, right? Help clean out their homes, etc.
Unbelievable what we saw. And the beauty of the tiny silver lining that there is with something like this is that the Jewish community from Houston and nationwide comes and helps in times of need. And it really is an amazing thing. Whether it's Orthodox community, conservative, Reform, they've done unbelievable things and really helped us out a lot.
Tell me about the Chumashim, because a lot of yours were damaged, right?
Yes.
So tell us what happened.
Well, we had people that were calling, and we had members of our shul that know people in other places, and they received emails and calls from people different places in the United States. And we had one shul, the name of Mosaic Law Congregation in Sacramento, California. That was amazing when I called them, and they said, "You want them all? We'll send them all."
They sent you boxes of Art Scroll Chumashim.
320 Art Scroll Chumashim, the ones we were going to order, and they were amazing. We can't thank people like that enough. We had other shuls that sent us a few Chumashim and of different types, and we had it was unbelievable. Koren gave us Sidurim for huge discounts.
Wow.
To help us out.
How long has the synagogue been at its current location?
Since 1960.
Oh, wow. And has it had damage from other storms previously?
This is the third damage from storm.
And nothing quite like this, I assume.
Nothing quite like this. This is probably, the difference now is, I'm not sure what the real difference is now. The number of people living in the community is probably the real difference. 15 years ago when the last storm hit, or 14 years ago, we only probably had half, maybe a quarter of the number of people living within the Eruv. And within this section, probably about maybe 30%.
Why has the community grown so much in the last 15 years?
I mean, we've had great leadership with Rabbi Gelman. We've had growth because of our medical center and because of all the things going on with jobs in Houston, job growth in Houston. It's been really a fantastic thing.
And that's why prominent Jewish organizations proclaim that Houston is one of the best places to raise an Orthodox family.
Yes.
And if prospective people want to come down, you would tell them wait a couple of months and then you can come down and see what's going on here, right?
You can come down now. It's not bad now. Is it great?
Even
No.
with all the devastation,
Even with
you
all
would
the
say you're
devastation,
going to see an amazing community.
I would think you'll see even a better community because people are getting together in one room, helping turn it over so that we can have a kiddush. You know, it's not just the help in the synagogue; it's the members in the synagogue now.
Right. In many ways, I'm sure going back to the grassroots effort that started the synagogue.
That's what it is. Absolutely.
People getting down to the basics, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Speaking with the president of the United Orthodox Synagogue, Max Reichenthal, is here. This is an important week, as you said, for the congregation. A lot of decisions are going to start being made, and in terms of the future and how the congregation is going to handle all of this. We wish you the best of luck with all of this. Different synagogue administrations are known for different things. I'm the administration that put in the air conditioning. I'm the administration that got the new Sidurim. This administration is going to look back on, and it'll be the administration that really was there at a very important crossroads for the congregation, for the future of the congregation.
Nachum, for sure. It really is an important time, and I have a good leadership team and good people working in the synagogue to try to make it a lot better.
Great meeting you today. Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it very much. Patricia Mancha, is it? Patricia Mancha is a FEMA spokesperson. This takes me back a couple of years when we did this with Superstorm Sandy. The most loved and the most feared people in the entire process. I don't want to say hated, God forbid, but you know how it is.
Yes.
People are in very difficult situations. We saw this up close and with our own eyes when it came to Superstorm Sandy in New York. Tonight's a very important night because, and we're pre-recording Wednesday morning show this evening on Tuesday night here in Houston, because a lot of people don't know who to turn to, how FEMA works, what deadlines they need to reach in terms of applying, what the government possibly would consider giving them depending on their situation. Have any of those questions been answered tonight?
Well, we try to answer those questions at every opportunity. But, there's still, every time that we meet with the community, there's still someone who needs to hear it.
Right.
And I think that there's a couple of things that we really want to emphasize. First of all, if you have not done so, please register. We cannot emphasize that enough. There is a time limit to this, so it's not like you can wait perpetually and decide, August 1st, well, I think I might get up and register today, because it may be too late.
Right.
July 28th is the deadline.
Yeah, we saw in New York the deadline continuously be extended, but I don't know if that's going to happen here.
Yeah, we don't know. That's
Right.
up to the state. They
Right.
requested, and so as of now, there's no request that's been made. So that's the first thing. And if people don't know how to do it, there's three very simple ways. They can call 1-800-621-3362. They can also go to their user smartphone or their any kind of application, any kind of device, and just download the FEMA app. It's completely free, and they can do it there. Or they can go to FEMA.gov,
Right.
and they can register there. So it's very easy. You can do it from your home. Or, of course, you can go to one of our disaster centers.
Do you give recommendations to people around the country about what type of insurance they should be holding? People should consult, right? They should get involved, no matter what state they live in figuring out what's best for them in their homeowner situation.
That's a great question. And the thing is that people should know their risk.
Right.
Because it all depends on where they live.
And
If they're
their
in a flood
zone,
zone
and
and they have to map and all of that. We have a lot of experts here tonight that can actually answer those questions specifically to where you live.
Right.
If you didn't have a chance to come tonight, because obviously people will be listening on the radio, they can go to FEMA.gov.
Right.
And there's actually a FloodSmart app that information. They can plug in their address, and it'll tell them their risk. So they can know. If even then they're not satisfied, they can talk to their insurance agent and actually get a comprehensive review of their insurance. We're not promoting or plugging any kind of product.
Right.
All we're saying is know your risk.
And you're here to help, which people don't always realize. You want to help.
Well, one of the really big challenges is that we see people in one of the most difficult times of their life.
Right.
And we know that. So
And they're desperate for help. And
they are, and a lot of people who have never ever needed help before. That's another thing.
Correct.
So they don't know how to work the
It's a
system.
unique
They don't know.
situation for them.
Exactly. So, I can tell you one thing. We have people here from all over the country. Anybody who has ever experienced FEMA knows that we have people travel from all over the country who come here. They come here only to help people who need the help.
Right.
And so, we're ready, and yes, we're here to help. We're the government.
Patricia, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
And I know the community thanks you as well.
Well, we are really appreciative of this opportunity to meet here with the community. There, you saw the great turnout, and a chance to talk to people one-on-one and to really help them understand the process, because it can be difficult. But for everything, please go to our website. It's easy. You can do it at home.
Thank you.
No cost. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Patricia Mancha from FEMA, spokesperson who has been very helpful this evening to a lot of people. Well, how appropriate that we close out this historic radio program, as far as I'm concerned, with Lee Wunsch, who is the head of the Federation here in Houston, Texas. Lee, I mentioned just a few minutes ago with the president of the congregation that every era of leadership has people look back on it and have different things to say about it. This was the era of when they plug in whatever. This is now a very important crossroads for this community, to say the least. The Jewish Federation so far, at least for those of us who are watching from thousands of miles away, has had a stellar reputation in the way they have responded to try to help people in the neighborhoods and communities down here in Houston, Texas. And I cannot imagine that that's going to stop here. I'm sure you're committed to just forging ahead and getting this community as back on its feet as possible.
Absolutely. We have to be here for the long haul. This is not it's 6 weeks since the storm. It's not a short-term recovery. This is could go on for years.
Right, no question about it. The after effects certainly for years, and the immediate effects for sure for a year or two.
Right.
We talked about the important benchmarks of a year from now, of 2 years from now. There are going to be some very important decisions that need to be made, and really some very important acts are going to have to be undertaken. People are going to have to step forward and figure out what is the future here in the community, and what does the community need in order to survive and thrive?
Right. Right now, the families are, as you can imagine, very focused on their short term. They want to get their home back to pre-flood status. For some families, that could be in 8 months, 10 months, could be a year. So we're helping them with that. But look, the greatest priority is to preserve the Jewish character of our neighborhoods, because without that, we don't have a Jewish community.
That's correct. You take great pride, and we've been emphasizing how unbelievably united this community is. It's certainly unique. I know people have tried to point out, even during this show tonight, have tried to point out that, there are a lot of communities around the country like this, but there is something unique here in Houston that's happening, and it seems that the camaraderie, friendliness, overall cooperation seems to be at a very high level. Must make you very proud being one of the leaders down here.
This is a great Jewish community, and people don't know about it. First of all, Houston is the 4th largest city in the United States, soon to be the 3rd. It's going to surpass Chicago, and most people don't know that.
I didn't know that. 4th? I would have guessed 18th or something. 4th largest city in the United States, and the Jewish community is a very small, underrepresented in the city, but it's a great Jewish community that, for the most part, gets along very well, all the different segments of the community. And of course, an event like this, people tend to raise the flag and rally together, and we want to maintain that. Right. And it's easy to lose sight of it when you're scurrying around trying to get your home repaired or your shul repaired. Are people like you, lifelong, I know it's not your entire life, but many, many decades, long resident of Houston, always thinking about the next storm, or it's not like that? There's not that type of paranoia down here.
There's not that type of paranoia, but if you've lived in Houston for any number of years, you're living in one of the cities 50 miles from the Gulf of Mexico that gets, we have to deal with the tropical weather.
It's going to be a byproduct of life down here.
Part of living in Houston.
Right.
We don't have to deal with the snow of the tri-state area. We have to deal with the heat that you experience today, and with living in a tropical climate.
Now, is today typical or not? Because I thought today's temperature was close to 100. I saw it was in the mid-80s.
Well, I invite you to come back in August.
It's even worse than this, huh? It's even worse.
Yeah, we have a number of our top community leaders that have second homes in New England or Colorado.
For that purpose, to escape the heat. That's interesting, I'll tell you. So is August more of a, I know, for instance, in Florida, one would consider it a pretty dead month down there. Is it very slow here in August?
August is very slow, but of course toward the end of August, the school year is starting, Chagim are coming, so people, start
drifting back.
Middle end of August.
How are we doing with the HoustonJewish.org/Houston Flood campaign, and has it exceeded your expectations?
It's exceeding, but has it not yet fulfilled our expectations.
There's so much more that's needed, right?
We've raised close to $1 million. With a lot of support from the Jewish Federations of North America.
Right.
But we need more. And again, when the price tag for the community doesn't include insurance, FEMA, and so forth, could approach $5 million.
When we're just talking about the immediate community, not talking about the whole city of Houston.
No, just the Jewish community. Between the families in need and our institutions in need, we still have a mountain to climb, which is why we need people's help from around the country.
No question about it. HoustonJewish.org/Houston Flood, HoustonJewish.org/Houston Flood. People like yourself make sure that those funds are distributed properly, and you have a lot of great organizations out there that are doing incredible work. We spoke to Hebrew Free Loan, spoke to Jewish Family Services. I mean, you have a lot of people on the front lines who are making sure that people in need are getting what they need.
Some great organizations that are out there right on the front lines helping families and helping our institutions. And it's our job to make sure it's coordinated and well-funded.
Lee Wunsch is the president and CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Houston. You have an amazing position here. It's been wonderful having you as a host. Thank you for welcoming us the way you have. And I hope that our listeners, I hope that financially people respond, obviously, but I know that they've got a tremendous amount of moral support, and today's show has certainly helped everybody get a glimpse as to what's happening here in Houston 6 weeks later. A lot different than I think what a lot of people thought.
We really, really appreciate you coming and spending the day with us, and hope you'll come back soon. More pleasant occasions.
Yeah, next time for a big celebration, I'll tell you that much. Thank you, Lee.
Okay, thank you.
Kol hakavod to you. I want to thank everybody associated with today's show for making it a great success. Go to HoustonJewish.org/Houston Flood. That's HoustonJewish.org/Houston Flood. Thank you to Lee and the staff of the Jewish Federation, especially Rodi Franco and Jennifer Friedberg. Thank you to Joel Dinkin, who we spoke to, Executive Vice President of the JCC. That's where we are. We're at the J. Thank you to the staff of the JCC of Houston. Rabbi Barry Gelman of the United Orthodox Synagogue of Houston, who we told you would have been on this program if he was in town. We continue to wish him Hatzlacha Rabbah with him and the congregation rebounding from this storm. Lonnie Schooler, who was with us, spoke a little bit about the Jewish tradition and history of Houston, Texas. Jacob Camaris of the Jewish News Service. I want to thank Jacob, jns.org, for information. Janice and Bobby Juker, owners of Three Brothers Bakery. Want to thank Linda Berger, CEO of Jewish Family Services, Rabbi Gidon Moskowitz of the Meyerland Minyan, Rachel Urowitz of the Houston Hebrew Free Loan Association. This has been an action-packed show. Max Reichenthal, president of UOS, United Orthodox Synagogue. Holly, Janelle, and Amy, who are pretty amazing. Julie and Amy, who both represented their families with their stories of the that Monday night in their homes and the aftermath, the terrible damage, unfortunately, to their homes. And Mayor Anise Parker, the Honorable Mayor of the City of Houston, joined us. It was a great bonus. Thank you, Stan, in our studio. Thank you, ZK, of course, here. And a big thank you to our producer, Mark Zomick, and the amazing Miriam L. Wallach. This was a show that was many weeks in the making, and no doubt a great source of pride for those who felt it was important for us to come down here, and we thank them, those who felt it was important for us to be down here in Houston. Mark Zomick, thank you. Really amazing list of guests. A lot of great people down here. There's something about a community. I don't know if we always feel this when we do shows in the New York, New Jersey area. There's a community, and it seems like everybody who was a leader in the community showed up here tonight and was part of this.
Well, I think what was interesting, what obviously even the people who watched the video won't necessarily see, was we had, obviously you just read, a lot of guests on the show. Right. I don't think there was anybody who came in who had to introduce themselves to any of the other guests.
Good point.
They all knew each other.
Even the mayor.
Right? She held court. You could have heard it in the background.
Yeah, we heard
for a good 45 minutes after she went off the air. All the community was pretty much surrounding her. She is, I guess maybe partly because it's her last term. She's a very popular mayor. Not running for re-election, but everybody knew in all of our conversations up until, we got here today. Everybody really knew each other.
Yeah, no question about it. Miriam Wallach, there's a small group of people we have to thank. Because you mentioned to me that without the help of our friends at Traveler's Choice, Devora, Yossi, everybody at Traveler's Choice, we would not have had the smooth journey.
Forget it. We wouldn't have had a car.
We wouldn't have the smooth journey to Houston that we did have.
Devora was a doll.
So thank you, Devora, Yossi, and everybody at Traveler's Choice. As usual, like they've done for the last, oh my gosh, how many years is it? 25 years?
You're going to date yourself. Don't do it. Don't do
As
it.
they've done for the last 20, 25 years, they have, of course, and ZK can attest to it, they have been at the forefront of making sure that all of our remote broadcasts go as smoothly as possible, and I thank them very, very much. We have about a minute left before we go to our closing theme. I remind everybody, HoustonJewish.org/HoustonFlood, HoustonJewish.org/HoustonFlood for information. Our Thursday edition of JMN will include Charlie Bernhout coming in with appropriate cantorial selections for the 3 weeks. And, of course, we have other things going on this week as well once we get back into our New Jersey studio. But this has been an amazing journey to have taken all this in such a short amount of time, to arrive and to get a quick 3-4 hours around the community, and then to come back to the JCC and do a show like this and meet all the people we met and speak to all of them was just remarkable. Final thoughts, anybody?
I have to thank Mark.
Mark!
I could never have produced this show. I have to thank Mark.
Mark Zamek.
I don't often agree with her.
That is great. Achenu b'Yisrael anachnu imachem, our brothers and sisters in Israel, we are with you. It's your favorite America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listeners-sponsored WFMU East Orange, WMFU Mount Hope, Rockland County at 91.9 in the FM dial, around the world on the web, jmintheam.org. And that will wrap up our journey to Houston and our visit with moral support and hopefully some financial support for the Jewish community of Houston. Go to HoustonJewish.org/HoustonFlood. Big thank you to Lee and all of our hosts. A special thank you again to Joel Dinkin, the Executive Vice President of the JCC, where this radio program emanated from. And special kudos to Jamie Turkel, both for social media during today's show and, of course, for the amazing brand new Nachum Segal Network tablecloth that nobody can get over. It's simply remarkable. Plenty more in our studio on Thursday, and by the way, plenty on our stream all day long right now at jmnam.org as well. Make sure you listen in or tune into the NSN app. Have a fabulous Wednesday. Till tomorrow, Nachum Segal reminding you, remember the past, live the present, and trust the future.